just in case. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. As soon as you're ready.
Thank you.
Welcome, everyone, to this Committee of the Whole of the Shippensburg Area School District. We believe we have 2 items on our agenda today. Or do we have 3?
Two and a half. They're
2.5? All right, so going in kind of quickest to longest order, I think. So first is the Mary Jane Taylor Education Mini Grant Awards. And then next we'll hear from the Greyhound Foundation, and then finally we'll have a construction update on the completed middle school project and possible upcoming high school / middle school projects.
I'd like to welcome Dr. Slattery to the mic.
I didn't check the mic. We good?
You are.
Good evening, and thank you so much for allowing us to present the Mary Jane Taylor Mini Grant Awards for 2023-2024. It's really an honor to present and have this program in honor of Mary Jane Taylor. She was a former foundation trustee, she was a teacher, she was an administrator, a lab school director, a scholar, and I think she would love that I would say that she was truly an innovator in education, and that's what this program is about. And just to share a really quick little story, that years back when Mary Jane was on the foundation board and I was on the governance committee to help find new trustees, we would talk to prospective candidates about the foundation and what we do and what the commitment might look like. And if anybody was on the fence, I always made sure just to mention that Mary Jane Taylor made the best homemade pumpkin roll and that she brought them to all of the foundation meetings. Sorry, Philip, I never told you that I did that. But sometimes people would call me quite quickly after I added that little bit. So this year the proposals will go in a particular order, not necessarily in alphabetical order or funding order, just an order. And some of the recipients are here in the audience, so they'll be coming up, and my colleague Sue Fink is going to help present those certificates. So the proposals chosen for funding amounted, the first 7 amounted to $5,004.80. The first award from James Bird goes to William Hopkins, Health and PE, for his project, The Fastest Sport on 2 Feet, Lacrosse. His funding amounted to $835.97. Congratulations. Our next recipient is from the high school, Chad Ship, Family and Consumer Science, for his project Anodized Cookware. The funding amount is $711.96. Congratulations. Also from the high school is Lisa Boltz, Agriculture, for her project Microscopes for Applied Agriculture Science. Funding amount is $1,000. From James Bird, we have Amy Wallow and Heather Lanker from the Special Education Department for their project Creating a Sensory Program for Self-Regulation, and their funding amount is $1,000. From the intermediate school is Beth Jones from the library for her project Encouraging a Love of Reading. Her funding amount is $606.87. For grades 5 through 12, Jennifer Deibler from the music department for her project Choral Masterclass, and her funding amount is $850. And from James Bird and Nancy Grayson, Marcia Schmooze, math specialist for her project Math is Lit, Literature to Support Mathematics in Kindergarten. Her funding amount, $306.24. The following proposals, the following choices for the Mary Jane Taylor mini grants is funded specifically by Horace Mann. They are from the high school, Teresa E. Harris Tibbetts, from the science department for her project and problem-based learning, game creation. Her funding amount is $471. From the middle school, Militia Miller from the science department for her project Bird Watching Club, birding binoculars and books. Funding amount is $336.74. Also from the middle school, Amy Boyer for the English as a Second Language, English Language Arts Department for her project, Spanish Literacy for Cultural Diversity. Funding amount is $500. And finally, from the intermediate school, Julia Suchanik from the English Language Arts Department for her project, Learning Vocabulary A to Z. The funding amount is $234. And those would be all of our recipients, and perhaps we can give one last round of applause to everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Slatterly and the foundation. Obviously, the things that you heard there are really dipping into engagement, and they're really things that take things above and beyond for kids. So thank you to the foundation for your generous support. And I'd like to hear more about that with the next presentation.
Hello, and thank you for having us. It will be my first opportunity to speak to you as the new Executive Director of the Greyhound Foundation. I am proud to stand here before you. Christy, are you doing the slides?
Yep.
Okay, sorry, I wasn't watching. So we have questions that you would like to have answered, and I think the public at large and our community would like to have answered. I won't turn around again. Who makes up the Greyhound Foundation? I'm going to go through the questions because we're all going to answer them. What is the work? You can stay on the first slide. Who makes up the Greyhound Foundation? What's the work and the purpose of the Greyhound Foundation? How do we raise money? How much money have we raised? What's the role of the new executive director? What's she doing? What are our current goals? And how was that golf event you had last month? So those are the questions we're going to answer today. Smile, Mr. Bard. Who makes up the Greyhound Foundation? We're a group of community members, as are all of you, made up of local business, university, school teachers, very concerned parents, and citizens interested in the well-being and the welfare of our students. That's who we are. We'll move on to the next with our founder, Philip Fegg, who started the foundation over 20 years ago.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. So 21 years ago, 22 years ago, maybe time's flying by, but several school board members and the local attorney asked me if we can start a foundation for the school district. So after applying for tax exemption, completing the paperwork for the IRS, we obtained officially our nonprofit status and allowed us to attract contributions that are tax deductible along with other donations from other areas. The mission initially, and really it hasn't changed, we added to it, but was to expand and develop the educational opportunities for all students within the district. This effort is intended but not limited to academic enhancement, transformational change, staff development, and scholarships. We further expanded our purpose to advance literacy within the district community, promote quality education, encourage athletic performance, support innovative education initiatives and further the partnership between the school board, the local community, businesses, as well as the political governments within the school district. And again, the purpose really hasn't changed over the years. If you want to go to the next slide, you can see here the amount of money we actually donated since 2021, 281,000. And you can see the various programs that we supported. And in the past, obviously, we were all volunteers. Nobody was paid, so we were doing it. We're volunteering our time, our talents, and our money to make these programs for the children of the school district and for the faculty to give back to them. And now, and we'll talk about this later, but we want to obviously take it to another level because we could see the need. And if you want to go to the next slide, you can see over the 10 years, again, just through volunteers and our initiatives, we contributed over $655,000 to the school district. So the ways that we've were able to do this, and it took really the whole community's effort. It's no one person or one board, but we started out, we did a lot of things with the children of the school district. Outrageous. We did a silent auction. We had stuff donated. Rob Davis was a big help. He donated a lot of stuff from Green Bay Packers. And we had these silent auctions. We had spaghetti dinners and just a number of things to raise our money to be able to support the $655,000. And we had fun runs and I forget what it's called, the paintball runs and stuff to raise money. And most recently, we tried to consolidate it into one event, and that was the golf tournament, which we'll talk more about in a minute. So I'm going to turn it over to Josh. Yep. Thank you.
Yep, Josh Steele, Vice Chair of the Foundation, to talk a little bit about the role of the Executive Director, and Sue's here so she can speak to maybe a little of the day-to-day and some of what she's working on, but really the role and what has led us up to this is what you see here. We've raised $655,000 over the past 10 years, but as an all-volunteer board, we're meeting our limitations, and we realized that we needed to be, a little more focused and have somebody that could come in and spend their day-to-day. And also with the collaboration with the school board, with administration, understanding the need and where the district wants to go in the next 5, 10, 20 years, there was definitely a need to partner with the board and the administration to bring Sue on board there. Her role will evolve. Initially in these first 6 months or so, it's been seek to understand, connecting with as many people as she can, really understanding how the foundation works. We understand that as a foundation board, we need to see how we evolve and how we can better support her through our committee structures, through how we do our day-to-day. And so we're really in that phase right now of understanding and then how that all works together to be more professional in our fundraising, to find every dollar we can find for this district.
So that's my role, and I know you'll probably have a couple of questions at the end of this, but what are our current goals? So we've recently undertaken a strategic planning process, and it's a first in quite some time for the foundation. And as Philip and Josh shared with you, there has not been someone as a paid employee to help organize, put the infrastructure in place, organize, put some systems, look at what is feasible for us to be able to raise large-scale money. Nobody's been doing that behind the scenes. We have some really active, amazing human beings that go out and shake a lot of hands, and they've done incredibly well over these years to raise the amount of money that they have. But it's not been a formalized process. Our current goal is to plan for success. How do you put that plan in place? So you sit down, you get to know people, you meet the community, or you re-meet the community after all these years I've been away after graduating from the school district and the university. And you ask them, what's been going on? Why are there conversations that seem like we've met and hit a standstill on some of our large-scale funding projects? Why are we still in this place? I am here because I am not only a systems thinker and a strategist, but I am hopefully also, like many of you are, people who will extend their hand and say, let's do this for the kids that we're here to support. It's our children that we are leaving behind when the ongoing situation continues and they're not getting their needs met in a way that they can be proud of us. I care deeply about this community. I do get emotional, and I am proud of it. I am a strategic fundraiser, and I have raised multiple millions, tens of millions of dollars in my career, and I know how to do it. One of the things I am here to do is to put the infrastructure in place into the foundation that has been predominantly raising money as really good handshakes among community citizens and people that care deeply, and we have been able to do a lot of good. What we need, we're going to be implementing software. It's not that expensive. Nobody has to pay for it. We've got this covered. To put a database in place to keep our lists growing. Christy, thank you for the vendor list that you provided us earlier this year when I just started, because why we have been so successful in the event that we recently had was we started to extend our hands, not only to the vendors and local businesses, but to the corporations that live and work amongst us here in this town, to the families. And what we're here to do strategically is grow our presence, be loud and proud about it. We want to end on a high note with regard to the golf tournament having been the most successful that it's ever been. But what we're here to do is to grow our presence in the community, be a friend not only to families and kids, to each other, work together, work as one, community, district, foundation, in honor and benefit of the kids that we have in our midst. So what I've been doing is evaluating and building the infrastructure little by little, and I'm only 6 months in, Mr. Scott, sorry. Align with the innovative programs is what we want to do with the district, the projects that you all have undertaken. We want to formalize that relationship and keep moving forward. At the end of the day, it is all about transcending the past and aspiring to a new tomorrow for the benefit of our students. That's what I'm here to help you do as a collective with the team of incredible trustees on the foundation board and with all of you that care and are so committed on the district board. Well, I've said enough. So.
Finally, I'd like to thank the school board for partnering with us to hire Sue. We're lucky to have somebody like Sue with her talents, and we really think the opportunity is unlimited, and I think we're just so fortunate that we have this opportunity. So I'm hoping the school board stays with us on this journey, and we will be successful and continue to be successful. We did have our golf tournament here recently. We raised a netted $30,000 in profit, and it was to help the administration, Christy and her folks, that we all came together as one to work to do that, and we basically doubled what we did the year before. So again, thank you, and thank you for your support.
I know there might be some questions. How do we appropriately ask for them?
We're just going to shout them out.
Okay, let's do it.
No question. I'll go first. No question, but more of a comment. Thanks to all of you for everything that you guys do. It's incredible when you look at the numbers and think about how much our kids in the community have gotten from the efforts of a lot of people like yourself. So thank you for all that.
Thanks, Mr. Kressler.
Yeah, and just a quick comment. Yes, we have a tremendous foundation, tremendous people on it who are just dedicated. Phil, Josh, Cheryl, Monica, everyone that serves on that board is completely Greyhound oriented, and I asked them to put that number together because I didn't know what it would be, but I knew it was going to be big. And when you see over a $500,000 of things dedicated to this district, thank you all, for taking on a unpaid part-time, sometimes full-time job. So thank you.
And it's only for 10 years, not the 20 years we've been in existence. So imagine, yeah.
For me, since you picked on me,
Okay. Your game.
I enjoy your enthusiasm. I think that's what we've been missing here. Like I'm on a board, I was hoping for a grant writer. Over the years they had and didn't turn out, but your enthusiasm, I met you at the track, it was bubbly. I felt real confident about what your foresight and what your vision. And I think that's going to be a big asset, not just to the athletic stadium, but the educational, that people want to give, but they didn't know who to give to. Phil and them are businessmen, and they only got so much time. So I appreciate the time and effort you're putting in. Hopefully we will see the results of that soon, but I thank you.
Mr. Scott, I appreciate your questions. And before tonight, I actually anticipated some of your questions. And actually, you're not asking me some of the questions I thought you might ask me. But I could hug you right now for saying what you just said. And I am passionate about helping these gentlemen and everyone that's on our Board of Trustees. But it's not just about them. It is about the kids. I was not fortunate enough to have my own children, but I was a child therapist in another life. And the kids in this community mean the world to me. And it's not just your kids, or your kids. They all do, because they are our future. And they deserve what we're about to do for them. But it means that all of us as adults need to come together and be able to lay down arms and say, I'm sorry, let's figure this out together. Let's figure out how we can have a win-win rather than an opposition. Thank you for saying what you said.
Any other board comments?
It's kind of a question, but not really. I'm under the impression that there may be room for more board members. Is that correct?
Dr. Lyman, are you asking people to join our foundation?
I am. I mean, it's a public meeting, and I think if there are people listening or interested in helping out the school district through the foundation, and you have a lot of energy and more importantly, not more importantly, but also money, we would love to have you on the board.
Sure. Yeah. So, we definitely, I've been doing this 21 years and another 21 years, and, I'd be as old as Charlie one day. So, but anyways, yes, we definitely need volunteers, obviously, to pass the baton off and carry the mission. So, yeah. Thanks, Mike, for that plug, because we do need volunteers that have the passion to make this succeed. So thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
Just a quick one. Sue, I said it then, I'll say it now. You are so the right person for the job. So thank you.
Thanks, Becky.
I have one quick comment question. First of all, really grateful that you came for this presentation, all three of you. It's good to hear your voices and hear your vision. My question, I guess, is, and maybe this is a question that you can partially answer now, and maybe it's something that you can stew on and bring back to us later. But I want to know how this board can most effectively help you all in your mission as you've defined it.
You are my new best friend.
Sorry, Mr. Scott.
Well, I have lots of documents that I've already compiled in the 6 months I've been here. And with regard to the partnerships And thank you, Mr. Kressler, for your help as well. Because one of the things that I've done is collectively met with a lot of you individually to find out where we're headed and how you can be of help, because that's what we need to be doing, right? So right now, with regard to some of the work that's still ahead of us, and there's still quite a lot of work, don't get me wrong, with regard to the infrastructure needed on the board, because these guys have been going out shaking hands and raising money still in a manner that is that needs to evolve a little bit by putting the infrastructure in place with regard to my having a database so that I can at a click of a button send out letters rather than doing them piecemeal through Google Docs. And that in and of itself, through the social media and all of the things, it will be about us having meetings potentially on the outreach committee, and maybe turning that into a bit of a campaign committee, and with documents that have charters around them so they can be formalized for better governance of how we integrate with each other and go from there. And I am all for that, because the more we can do that and have outlines and architecture around how we work together, the better off we will be. And that's how we will be successful in large-scale fundraising. Absolutely. Thank you for asking.
Well, I think that's right, and I appreciate those comments. And I just, in listening to you, I imagine that, and I don't know that much about fundraising, but I imagine it's easier to fundraise. I mean, sometimes you can fundraise around a general goal, like, hey, we have this, specific pot of money that we use to give grants to teachers with innovative ideas, and I'm sure that helps, but I'm sure it also helps sometimes to have a very specific goal. Like, this is a thing that we are trying to accomplish, and we need money to help us towards that goal. So this is, again, perhaps a conversation for later, but if you can help us understand how to frame or make specific goals for you to fundraise, how that would be most effective for us to, sort of package in that way, please let us know so that we can, take action in that regard.
I will. And this 4-page document, I will edit down to make very brief notes out of, to do just that for a capital campaign.
Terrific, thank you.
Ms. Fink, one last
Thanks.
question.
Oh, yes.
So starting
Several.
off the new year, will you be presenting on a regular time schedule, like once a month, quarterly, once every other month? What are your plans for
I
presenting?
don't have plans for that. It's more about exactly how we were saying with each other. How do I work with the trustees, and how do I work with the district board, since we have a dotted line, right? And what would you feel is right and necessary? When we're in the midst of a capital campaign moving forward, you would want more information from us. In the interim, until we get to that place, is quarterly acceptable. You have to decide also amongst yourselves what feels right for you. And we can have that conversation and work it out as we move forward, for sure, absolutely.
Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.
And thanks to all the teachers that came out tonight, and for being here with us, and good luck, and tell us all about how things work out. At this time, we'd like to welcome Site Logic.
Did you want PFM to go first?
Well, hang on with that.
Did you? I don't know.
Let's go with Site Logic.
Okay.
You on?
You're up, Mike.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you, Mr. August. My name is Mike Arnold. I've been at board meetings before, but I don't believe you've heard me speak. I serve as the project executive for the district starting from about spring, when the Phase 2 project at the middle school ramped up. And I have been supporting both Melissa during the development pre-construction process, and you've heard her present, obviously, as she's taken you through the process, and then Rochelle as our Director of Operations as she saw the successful completion of Phase 2 of the middle school this past summer. So tonight, we want to accomplish a few things. Obviously, we want to give you an update, and then ask for to start to think about some decision-making that needs to happen as we move from this schematic design phase, which was presented back in September. There's a lot of good discussion regarding that piece. And as we're moving through design development, we're hitting some critical moments in the process as it relates to decision-making. So we're going to talk a bit about the budget analysis and how we got there tonight. And also, Rochelle's going to give a brief update on the middle school project, and then talk a bit about next steps. So just as a way of recapping, Phase 1, Phase 2, you're very familiar with those projects. We began the summer of 2022 with the middle school Giza portion of the project, and then moved into the following summer, this past summer, into the hybrid project. We were doing, continuing to do Giza work as well as the additions to the middle school. During that particular time, we took a pause on Phase 3 so that a walkthrough could occur in July of 2022. Since then, obviously, we've completed Phase 1 and Phase 2, and we are now, based on the ship takes shape discussions, we've identified some parameters as far as what the needs were and what those budgets were associated with those projects. We're going to talk a bit about where we finished up as far as Phase 1 and Phase 2 were financially and how that impacts moving into Phase 3. Before I do that, though, I did want to ask Rochelle just to give a brief update on the middle school project that finished up this past summer.
Good evening. So as Mike said, Phase 1 completed successfully along with Phase 2 for the start of your new school year. Phase 1 was your energy savings project in your existing building. A lot of the mechanical equipment was changed, your new windows, some painting. The Giza project was a good delivery method for that portion of the job because it allowed us to get equipment early so that we weren't facing all the supply chain issues that have been plagued over projects for the past couple years. The board also saw no change orders on that part of the project because we took care of anything that we came upon because that is the risk that we take with that Giza project. So hopefully, I know it's a little hard to see the inside with all the mechanical stuff up in the ceiling, but hopefully on Phase 2, which was the hybrid project, hopefully you saw those two new additions. I thought I came midway through it, but I thought your cafeteria and additions turned out amazing. I was extremely surprised at the difference the windows made in your cafeteria expansion. Hopefully your kiddos like eating in there, better than they did before. But like I said, both projects turned out great. We are pretty much finished with the punch list at this time on both projects. The only thing that we're waiting for are the new signage for the new additions so that they matched what was in your existing building already. It's supposed to be coming in this month, so hopefully by the end of this month we will be 100% completed. And I know our commissioning agent is working with your control company that did your new DDC controls in your existing building. I know they are in the process of commissioning that and doing the punch list on those as well. So any questions?
What's a Giza?
Pardon me?
What's a Giza?
Giza is the energy savings project. It's guaranteed where we go in and we do projects where we will save you energy over time. And that amount is guaranteed to the district for X amount of years. And then a year from now, our measurement and verification unit will come in and they will assess and show you where we save that value that we said we would save you over a number of years. And each year they'll do that to show you that we're saving you that amount of money.
And if you don't?
We will pay you the difference.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Could you explain to the board the difference between Giza and traditional?
Yeah, so with the, in the state of Pennsylvania, it is one of, I believe, only 2 states left that follow the procurement laws that require you to bid a project out to a minimum of 4 prime contractors, okay? And you have to take the lowest responsible bidder, okay? With the Giza law, it allows you, and when we say Giza, it's the elements of a project of renovation that can provide back to you energy savings, whether it be a roof, whether it be windows, whether it be HVAC equipment, as Rochelle was just mentioning. That law allows you to do a design build with that work. You don't have to take the lowest responsible bidder. We served as your Giza contractor, so we bid it out to preferred contractors so we don't get trapped with maybe an undesirable group that might be working. And what happens with that is through that process, because we're in the buildings, developing the project, taking on the risk, you're not subject to change orders like you are on the public side. So with the Giza this past summer, there were, as Rochelle had mentioned, there were opportunities there that in a normal scenario, you may have been paying some change orders. You didn't have to with that. The other thing that's very advantageous about it is that you can move the project and procure equipment in advance of a public bid type scenario. And that's very, very important, especially with this upcoming project, because you want to be able to procure, have that equipment in your hands so you can take advantage of the summer months. You know, a lot of the renovations we do during, with public school projects, we really have to put a lot of work into the summer so we're not disrupting the educational function of the buildings. So those are just some of the, hopefully that answered a bit of your question as far as the process is concerned.
The Giza, is that basically only on things that will save us energy, not traditional other items?
Yeah, the way that, and I may get too specific for you, but I'll go in here. There are, I think it's 19 to 20 particular items that are outlined in the Giza law that all are allowable under that particular law to bid it that way. In addition to that, you also can bid via the Giza what we call collateral damage. So if you're in this room right here and you want to replace the lights in the HVAC system and it requires you to remove this ceiling and replace this ceiling, that can be bid under the Giza as well. In addition to that, your total amount of whatever that falls under the Giza, you are also allowed to bid an additional 15% of work, whatever you want, under the Giza system as well. A lot of districts prefer this because it gets them out of that antiquated, public bid scenario. Now, when you're dealing with additions, you have to go with the public bid scenario with those. The only thing that we can bring into the additions is the HVAC system.
Does Giza open us up to potential overruns, since we're not going out for traditional bids?
It does the opposite.
Does the opposite?
Yeah. It actually does the opposite because you don't have the change order exposure.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And just to follow on what Rochelle was saying, there was a lot of work that had to be done this summer, and with the supply chain issues that we have, and actually what we haven't talked much about is labor shortages as well in our industry and throughout a lot of industries. And a lot of effort and it was put into trying to make this happen this summer. And those of you that had a chance to walk through the building in maybe late July, you probably were like gasping, like, how are they going to do this? How is this going to happen? Fortunately, things came together. We had a cooperative group, worked well with everybody on site. So moving into just a little bit of a recap on the middle school finances. As you're aware, in that borrowing of the ESSERs and the first borrowing, the goal was to do all of the work that we just talked about, but also the parent loop, okay, to get that going. We were unable to accomplish that because of various items, including, the bid day market conditions, some of the professional design fees overruns that happen there, additional services, and just some budget alignment. So we were unable to get the parent loop in. We've also gone through a redesign with the parent loop because our estimates were coming in, a bit higher than what was projected. That said, we still have left over from the original borrowing $766,000 that we're taking that to put it into the equation for this next phase. And we've been sharing the information. What I'm about to share with you, we've shared with your bond counsel, PMF, as they provide advice to you as it relates to the next borrowing. So when we take a look at the task at hand, which is moving into phase 3, what we've done, and this works off of what Melissa had presented in September as it relates to the schematic design estimate. So again, I just want to, as far as the process and where we are in that process, we're kind of midway through design development. So we had programming and schematic design. We provided some estimates for that. Now your architect is moving into design development. And one of the things that we want to bring to your attention tonight is that at that schematic design discussion, we definitely highlighted the fact that of all of the wants that were out there from the programming, it was going beyond your budget, okay? So there was decisions that needed to be made. And one of the discussion points was, well, do we design it all, okay, and take it as alternates so we can see where they come in on bid day so that we can then determine what we're going to go forward with. When you do that, you just need to understand that you're paying for a design that you may ultimately not proceed with. That is normal to an extent. Every project we try to incorporate alternates because you never know what's going to happen on bid day, right? You know, you could get lucky and you're able to keep something in your project, or the bids could come in high, so you would like to have a few deduct alternates as well. But to design $5–10 million worth of alternates is not the norm, because you could be spending a lot of design fees and not getting anything for that. So our job is to kind of continue to provide recommendations and education in that regard. So stepping back then, if you look at the screen, we're identifying the various buckets as it relates to take shape. So we've tried to break it down a little bit further. So you have what we call the renovation asset protection, or the highest priority piece that has to be done to keep things moving. And again, we're recommending that we proceed with that same Giza delivery because it all falls under that piece. The next section is the one that is volatile. That's the one that we need to discuss a bit, and that's your additions. Those are predominantly the public bid pieces. And that's currently, in order to stay within your borrowing, we have that targeted at $5.6 million, and we'll come back to that number in a minute. Then we've broken out the site work for the high school, the middle school additions, your parent loop, the redesign of the parent loop, and then your soft cost support all of the above, your design fees, CM fees, FF&E, fixtures, furniture, and equipment. Then we've earmarked the $5.6 million for the stadiums. We've earmarked $3 million for the elementary schools. And that gives you the $33,575. If you go to the next column, the funding amount, and we've been working with Christy and obviously PMF on this, your 2023 borrowing, as we understand it, is $9.7 million, which gives a future borrowing limit of 23.1. And then if you have the carryover, if you add the carryover from the 2022 borrowing at 766, that gives you 33,575. So we backed into the second number in that second column, which is the 5.65, okay? Just to give you the logic on how we came to that number. So that begs the question, what is in the 5.65, okay? So what we shared with you last time was a bit of a breakdown as far as what those additions are worth, what they're valued at the schematic design piece. Since then, you know, we have worked with the architect with the understanding that we have a budget concern. Can we tweak some square footage here and there? Can we start to, hone this in a little bit? And they've started to do some of that. And the items that are highlighted in yellow, the music classroom stage storage edition, the FCS STEM edition, the secured front entrance, which we did here was one of the more higher priorities, and then the high school site work for the additions. Those items are the ones that would fit into that $5+ million budget. If you add the gym to that, then you've now exceeded the budget, okay, as it stands, the $33 million plus. And I haven't seen, and I don't know whether Jamie Doyle and her crew has presented or they plan to present tonight.
They're right after you.
Right, okay. So there'll be clarity to that borrowing limit, I'm sure, with Jamie's presentation. So I guess we sit here at Design Development as construction managers. Our role is not only to manage the construction, but to provide professional guidance and recommendations as we move forward, because of our experience with all of this. So we believe we're at a point in the project, in the design, where we believe it would be very beneficial to kind of make some decisions as it relates to what is in that base project. What do you want the team to design fully all the way to a bid event?
Ask a question.
Yes.
But I've been asking about the money for quite a while. I would like to know, we are told we couldn't do anything till the bids were done. Now, am I misunderstanding you saying you want us to make choices now before the bids are done?
Well, I think the comment was to find out where we stood with the middle school project, the phase 1 and 2.
So Fred, I think my understanding, and Mike, please correct me, we're going to spend, to do all of that, we're going to spend a lot of money on design fees. That's going to take away from the amount that we have to spend. So it is most efficient and economical for us as a board to say and identify what our base project is, okay? We know what the numbers are. We know what we have to spend. Us chasing designs that aren't, we know we're not going to be able to afford, is just going to make us have less to be able to build with. So the decision point that Mike is talking about is really coming down to identifying a base bid that fits our budget. And then we skip all of the design fees that we would incur getting drawings made, for example, for the gymnasium. There's going to be significant amount of money that we would spend on design fees for that part of the project to be able to turn in to be bid on. We can do that. It just means that we have less to choose from, and at the end of the day, we still have to make a decision. So, it's really the idea of how do we avoid design fees up front so that we're not wasting that money when it could be applied to the actual construction. It can be a mix and match kind of thing, but at the end of the day, we have $5.6 million to spend on additions at the high school within this budget. So any a la carte mixing of those things that we've identified could be the base bid. Spending money on design is probably, spending limited resources on the design process is not something that I would recommend, and in talking with SiteLogic and EI, like not the best course for us. So tough decisions to make. We've got to a certain point. We know what the costs are. We've reduced those costs through the design project process as low as we can get them. And we'll have modified numbers shortly, which may free up some money, but these are pretty close. But we've done significant work to get even those numbers down to as low as we can possibly get them.
Yeah.
I understand that, but I'm not the sharp at this construction and stuff. Me and a hammer are about as far as I go. But I do understand that when we were talking about this, we said, we took a vote, 5-4, we lost. We said certain things we knew we weren't going to do. Why not take them out right away? But then you said we need to bid them before we can take them out.
No, actually, what you just said as far as take them out if you know you can't get them, that's where we are.
That's exactly where we are.
Exactly where we are right now. So we're recommending, and if you look at this particular slide, that we've seen all the ones, and I do want to say this. This is not abnormal what you're going through. This is very much the standard process through a project where, from programming and schematic design, it's a lot of the art of the possible, right? You're programming, you're meeting with your administration, you're meeting with your faculty, and you're compiling needs, but you're probably also compiling wants at the same time. And now when you get into schematic and you're moving into design development, that's when the hard choices need to be made, because the footprint of the building needs to lock in, because now you've got to get the design so you can put it out to bid, okay? So where we are, the point that we're at is to make sure that you are not wasting money designing something that you know you can't afford.
I understand that. Maybe I'm the only one. I'm sorry, but I'm going to ask a daggone question anyway. Laurie, let's say the gymnasium. We don't want it.
Tell us.
Do we need to bid it?
No, Fred.
All right, then that's what I'm understanding. Why did we go through that ritual of voting last time, when we could have just sit there at the board and said, we're not going to do this?
We didn't have the numbers at that point.
We didn't have those numbers?
We didn't have the final numbers.
Yeah.
You just got those numbers.
We're moving. We're gaining more knowledge, with the project, so we're able to give you more updated information as we go.
And Fred, there's as I said, it's a la carte. So this at least gives us, as a board, decisions to make. Do we want the gym and something else? Like, it's going to be some kind of combo platter of those 5 items there that fit within our budget. So, not knowing, what package or base bid that we wanted at that time, going through this process allows us to get numbers there, to make informed decisions on what we can actually afford at the high school.
Right, so in essence, these numbers aren't the same. If I go back and look at the paperwork, these numbers won't match. These would be different numbers, right?
So, good evening. The numbers that you're seeing associated with each addition and renovation, those are the same numbers that we presented in September.
Okay.
The schematic estimate. Okay, but what is very important to note is that these estimates are going to change next month as we get to the design development estimate. So everything was a little big picture, and we were estimating it. Now everything's starting to come into focus, and that's the scope and design modifications that we've been going through as part of this process. We are putting numbers to those design changes, and that's the note that you see there. Estimates will be adjusted down as scope has been reduced. So everything that's highlighted yellow is the recommendation, because we know that square footages and what is in those scopes of work has been reduced. So we know that what you're seeing is going to be slightly lower next month with the design development. That high school gymnasium expansion, we feel confident in saying that number is probably going to get a little bit bigger because of the amount of structural work, and it's a little bit more complex renovation because of where it's located. So we're able to kind of look at this and say, all right, with these renovations, we're very comfortable knowing what's happening with those scopes. It's that gymnasium that's a little bit more difficult to figure out. And we're making those recommendations based on the budget that you have available, based on the conversations that you're having, to kind of meet the needs of your desired priorities. And we don't need to bid it out to, get an understanding of what it's going to cost. We're getting closer to those numbers.
And I think it's important to keep in mind that the decision is the district's. We're simply giving a recommendation based on what we understand is the borrowing capacity of the project.
So I feel I need to make one comment here. Fred's expressing a particular concern, and I guess I think that I'm on the same page as Fred, because a couple of months ago when we were having this conversation, I tried to ask in as many ways as possible, because I couldn't quite believe it was true, but I was assured that it was true, that if we, sort of moved on with like this broad selection of projects, like moved on to the design phase, that we would not be charged for design fees for those projects that we chose not to take on. And I remember asking the question like 3 times in different ways to get assurance. And then we had a conversation amongst us, and I was basing like my, comments on that assurance. And I mean, what you're telling me now makes perfect sense, and I get it, but it's exactly the opposite of what you told me in that meeting. And it's okay, right, for like in this conversation and moving forward, but what you didn't see is sort of the like social damage that, sort of takes place here as we are sort of engaging in conversation / disagreement / argument, when apparently some of that is being driven by wrong information. And communication problems happen, right? Miscommunications, like I get it. But I just have to say that I'm really frustrated, and I want to apologize to my board members for, making an argument based on information that I clearly misunderstood. But I think that I did as much as I could to understand that information
I
correctly.
didn't misunderstand it because I was right there with you on the same page. And I think the only time that I've seen that answer change was at the last facilities meeting when Mr. Noggle asked the question about the design fees. And then that's when the answer changed and evolved a little bit to where we're at now. So, I mean, I myself am just as confused, frankly, Fred, as you, and frankly, as Dr. Coates.
I was the only one.
So I'm not necessarily asking for an apology or anything. We don't need to rehash it, but I just wanted to say that to you all and also to my board members. And, as far as I'm concerned, we can sort of move on. But it's quite clear now, and this makes sense, right? We need to choose which projects we want to move forward with before we go into the design phase, because anything that we ask for design on, we are going to be charged for.
Yeah, if I could comment, and I apologize if somewhere along the line it was miscommunicated, but I will tell you this: we don't have a contract with your architect. We would never say that they would do anything for free. That is it's theirs to answer. So I'm not sure where this came from.
Again, we don't need to litigate it. That's not the point.
Okay.
If we understand it all correctly now, great. I just felt like I needed to make that comment and acknowledge to my fellow board members that I was clearly making an argument like with the wrong information.
Mike, is it true that in order to get to those numbers, we had to do that design phase?
Well, I think to get through the schematic, the schematic piece, yes, because you have to have something to estimate, okay. But now we're at a point where let's make a decision so we don't have to incur any future design fees that you don't need to incur. But again, I have to defend my group here. We would not have committed anything for another consultant that they would be doing anything for free. That I know. So,
Well,
not sure where this came from.
It came from the fact that we asked the question numerous times about this because we had a concern, and we kept telling about design. You got to do this, and some of us felt that we could sit down and look at this cost. We're going to be too much money. The superintendent said we got $22 million. So, okay, we take this out, we got $18 million. Take this out, we got $14 million. It wasn't that hard. But the explanation made it hard for me to understand why. I couldn't just tell you, this is what we're going to do. That's it.
So just as a point of process, we're approaching 8 o'clock, which is normally when we end this meeting, but clearly we're having a good conversation and this needs to continue. So unless there's any objections, I recommend that we continue to 8:30 before we begin our regular meeting. Are there any objections to that?
But they're finally getting some answers.
All right, well then let's, continue. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so we've been on this particular slide for a piece as it relates to these various additions. So I think as we move forward, and Melissa, correct if I'm wrong, I think our goal was to have a decision moving forward so that we could continue robustly the design process and keep on a schedule. And we move to some of the next steps. We want to be able to present the design development estimate in December. And again, we provide estimates at each part of the design. So we provided one at schematic, provide one at design development, and we'll refine it at construction documents. And again, when we do our estimates, it's based on what we are looking at as far as the progress drawings are concerned. We're also watching the market conditions and how that affects the bids as well. At that time, what we'd like to do is, wrap up that what is the base bid, and are there some alternates that you do want to consider? As I mentioned before, there's always usually in most projects a certain number of alternates. Some of them require design, some of them actually don't. Switching out various levels of quality of finishes doesn't necessarily require hours of design. It's a matter of changing a spec section from one type of a floor material to another. Those type of things are smaller alternates that we would recommend for the district to look at. And then as we've been moving through each one of these phases, we pause. We take a vote on moving into the next phase, which is your construction document phase. So January, we'd move into the construction document development, and then in February, towards the end of February, we would then begin to formulate that construction document estimate and get ready to go out to the public bid in March of 2024.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'd like to back up just a little bit, a little bit earlier in your presentation, you talked about us having $405,000 left from the 2022 borrowing. And you added our interest back in to kind of like lessen the blow of the loss. Wasn't that particular borrowing supposed to incorporate the parent loop as well, so our loss is greater?
Yeah, that's what I had mentioned.
Okay, how much was our total loss? I'm sorry.
Well, you would basically take the delta. If we were able to do the parent loop, and I think it was scheduled at that time at like 2 million, 2.4 million. Say that the 766, take that off of the 2.4, so you're running about a 1.7 was the overage. Now, of that 1.7, some of the soft costs were attributed to some of the work that's actually in the 2023 work. There was a campus survey that was done, and there was some design work that was done that actually moves forward. So that amount of money would also lessen what you would consider the complete overage, on the first phase to maybe 1.4, 1.5, somewhere around there.
Is it normal to add the interest that we accrued?
We were told
Just asking.
Yeah, I think we were asked to do that, Christy, as far as adding that interest.
Well, we kind of said you can show it as a separate line item,
yeah.
but not to put it when you compare it to budget, because the interest was not factored in as revenue when you compare it to budget.
So that makes our loss a little bit more.
I guess, but I guess I'm a little confused as far as we were told to put the 405,000 in, and then this money is actually there to help with.
We were just actually wondering, what we actually bid versus what we actually paid for.
Right.
So that was basically it.
Well, who told you? You said someone told you. Who told you?
This was just in conversations on how to show what we can carry over into 2023.
Well, I'm going to go back to the middle school. I'm sort of confused. You say we have $700,000 left over from that school?
You have it left. You have 405 left over. Plus, if you take the interest, you're at the 766. Now but remember that you did not get the parent loop.
Yeah.
I mentioned this at the beginning.
Yeah.
You didn't get the parent loop as part of that. So if the parent loop was worth 2.4, and the carryover is 766,000, that means phase one overage was about 1.7.
Can you actually tell us?
Can you go back to that chart? Excuse me.
I'm sorry, Fred.
No. Can you go back to that chart?
Sure.
For the middle school? I'm definitely confused now. All right. You say we had so much money set line and the parent loop was included, correct?
Yes, in the original budget, but we couldn't do it because of the overage of the phase 1 and 2 bid event.
What was all right, phase 2 is the high school?
No, phase 1 and 2 is both middle school. There was a phase 1, there was a phase 2 to the middle school.
All right, so what happened to the money for the parent loop?
We didn't have it. We didn't have enough to do it.
So when we set aside the $14 million to do the whole job, that included the parent loop, didn't it?
It was supposed to include the parent loop.
All right, so we didn't do the parent loop. So that money should be still sitting there not being used. Or what was it used for?
It was used for the middle school phase 1 and 2.
Middle school went over
When-
about 1.1 million because of the hard costs.
When did you know it was going to go over? When did y'all know it was going to go over that the budget? We're just hearing about this. I am just hearing about what 700-something thousand. I know we was told by the superintendent we were going to be over, but I never dreamed we were up in the millions.
Can you respond to that?
So, Mr. Scott, we had been talking previously about knowing that what we would have left to carry over was probably going to be just under $1 million from the middle school project. Most of that was due because we did not get to put that middle school loop in place. That's kind of that key thing that kept sliding. We knew that it was redesigned twice. There were professional additional services, around $90,000 that were associated with that and the redesign for other elements on middle school phase 1 and 2. We had, as Mike said, additional funds from that 2022 bond borrowing that were applied to projects that are currently in development. So there were those campus surveys. We actually had some project development costs that were kind of paid out under the budget that was set aside for middle school phase 1 and 2. There were some bid day market conditions that we were fighting whenever we bid this out. But I think, one of the key pieces here is that at the very top of that, you can see that our target budget and the actual budget, those were not aligned. We had just over the target budget that we started with was 14.3. The actual budget, which was the $4.3 million for the ESSERs that came through, in addition to the actual borrowing that was available, was 9.7. So, before we even started, we were working and we were designing, we were behind. So it's a combination of all of those impacts to the budget and the project that we're starting to add up. I wish that we could just point to one single line item and say, here's the $1 million line item that we were over, but it was throughout the course of the project, throughout the many phases and the design, where we started to see things start to impact the budget.
And I understand that, but how many times did I stand here and ask you, where are we at in the budget? We're going to be close, or we may have be over. At no time did anybody say that we started out in the hole at the beginning. Why weren't we told that?
I don't have a good answer for you. I think that our total budget and what we understand what we were starting versus the actual budget and what it ended up being were just not coming together when we had hoped for them to. So we weren't able to really identify in great detail what was happening. And I did want to thank Christy and Joanne and Rochelle for spending many hours getting every single invoice that was associated with these middle school phase 1 and 2 projects clarified, going back to the architect and the civil engineer and any other professional services to make sure that we were able to track the cost of every single penny on this so that we could present this information to you today.
I didn't mean to take your time.
You're good, Fred. Go ahead.
But Superintendent, you sent an email saying that there was a soft cost, there was an error in the soft cost in the middle school. What in the heck was that?
So I believe what you're referring to is the actual borrow. The budget was set on the actual borrow, not taking out fees.
Financing cost for that. So, the budgets that we were working with was 4.3 for the ESSER and $10 million for the borrowing. But as I just said, the actual borrowing was less than $10 million. So we're starting to see a difference in the budgets that we had allocated, kind of our starting point, versus the actual cost.
Now, can I just add, we as a board approved change orders for about $15,000. Like, those are change orders that we knew about. So I think that the consensus is the surprise numbers, that there's such a large, almost $2 million that's kind of, that we, in our opinion, kind of maybe unaccounted for. I think my biggest frustration is the presentation, and I'm disappointed that the numbers don't tell a story of how we got to where we are. That's very disappointing. Presentations, numbers should tell a story, and this is very misleading, and it's frustrating, and I have trust issues maybe from the beginning, and this certainly isn't helping, and I'm very frustrated.
Yeah. So I'm actually glad, Mrs. Everly, that you brought that up. We have a slide that we can show. Oh, I'm so sorry to get through this. Okay. So this is probably the detail that you're looking for. I wasn't sure if we were going to be able to get into this. So you can see kind of the breakout, especially if you look at the left-hand side of the chart, you see the professional services, okay? And what you're starting to see is that targeted budgets versus the actual costs that came in. Sometimes we don't have this information until the very end of the project when we can start to see what was actually spent versus what was actually budgeted. The two biggest discrepancies that you'll see are the architect's fees there, and I'm sorry I'm having a hard time reading it, but it's just over like 400,000 versus the 502 that was the actual.
Melissa, the architect budgets, was that due to us going through many designs and design changes?
I think that those were a combination of things, not necessarily on the architectural side, but this is also design changes on the civil engineer, having to design and redesign. Things like the parent loop or anything to kind of support the work that was already in place. Some of it is also attributed to the architect. The other piece you can see is soft costs, that FF&E we had budgeted. That is furnitures, fixtures, and equipment. So we had budgeted what we thought was a healthy budget of $75,000, primarily for the furniture that was going into your additions. The actual cost came in closer to $132,000. So big discrepancy there.
Excuse me, what was that? What would you say? What was that discrepancy? You said something, I didn't hear you quite. The furniture?
Yes, so that was the actual cost of the new furniture that was purchased for the cafeteria and the middle school addition. So we had budgeted $75,000. The actual cost was $132,000.
Why is the Giza amendment double? It's 1.1 for a target, and it's over 2 mil. It's like 2.1.
That's a great question, and I'm glad you brought it up. So as we had put in place Giza Phase 1, we started to develop Giza Phase 2. And if you just look down a little bit further to the additions and site work, you see the budget was the $4.3 million. That's your ESSERS fund. But do you see how that number decreased? So what we ended up doing, and what you'll see is that decreased amount is actually scopes of work that we put into the Giza Phase 2. So it was extending the mechanical systems into the addition. We took it out of the public bid because we did not want to go over that $4.3 million ESSERS budget, and we took that mechanical scope that was eligible for Giza work and we put it into Amendment 2.
So if we'd have done traditional bids in this particular case, we'd have been locked in on prices and we'd have had a solid
It would have been,
Giza in this particular case,
yes.
we lost.
I'm sorry, with Giza,
If we'd have done traditional bidding, we'd have been locked in to our pricing. But in this particular case, since we didn't go through the 4 vendors or that type of deal, is that why we lost?
so I feel like that's actually reversed. So if we had bid that out through the traditional, you would have been at risk for change orders.
We would have known.
So as a way to control the scope and make sure that what was bid out publicly would not exceed your ESSERS budget, we pulled it into the Giza so that we knew we could comfortably absorb it and that price wouldn't change. And that's why you see that $2.1 million number versus the 1.29 number, because we're pulling scope into the Giza where it's a little bit more protected. And then that final Giza amendment that was approved, that's the deduct, that was for that electrical redundant line that we bid out as an alternate, whether or not and you elected to not pursue it as part of the project.
So in the interest of kind of looking forward, and I don't want to stop the conversation or anything, but it seems like there are lessons that we learned from this process, and I guess what I'm hoping for is kind of an assurance that these same, I don't know what to call them, miscalculations or whatever, that won't, that will be better in the next phases. Is that, or is this just sort of us trying to understand some of the normal process of a big construction project?
No, as far as the misunderstandings, I mean, that's part of the reason why you have this team, maybe, in lieu of the previous team. We're here to try to regain trust and get things moving in the right direction. These are, we're going back in history here. This was kind of a little, and if we didn't present it in a great way, apologies. It's a hard, it's actually was a very hard thing to get our head around, to understand all these different buckets and where everything went. What we did want to do was at least show, where you were, what monies were left that you could move into what you're moving forward with now. And that's what, that gets us back to that overall slide that shows where all the buckets are and where your borrowing capacity is and things of that nature, so that you could make decisions, educated decisions on the scope of this upcoming project.
So, thank you.
You say there's carryover of the 700 some, 400 some plus the interest. I guess I can't quite get my head wrapped around, if the parent loop was included in that $14 million, we don't have no carryover because we didn't fulfill that end of the contract.
Right.
So we really don't have no carryover. We're actually losing money.
You technically.
I mean, I know I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I don't know how you can say that's a carryover when you didn't fulfill the contract on the $14,000 or $14 million deal because the parent loop didn't get put in.
I completely understand that. I think it was trying to capture the monies that would be available to you that were left over from that borrowing. And I did say this right out of the gate. The parent loop was not able to be accomplished because of how everything came in.
I understand that, but why, I guess my thing is, why are you saying we're carrying over money? Because we're really not carrying over money. It cost us money.
Yeah, but I think in order to, and the reason I don't, I completely understand where you're coming from, but I do want, for the purposes of this analysis, which is this next slide here, to determine the funding for what you're planning to do, we had to show that money because it's there because you didn't spend it because we didn't do the parent loop.
Well, why can't you just show the loss?
We can show that as well, but
I think that's what everybody'd like to see.
But
they don't like to see it,
but at this point it is. I mean, yes, yes, we didn't get the parent loop, but I think what you're saying is we have that money now.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to call it,
right.
We have extra money now for whatever reasons. However you want to label the reasons for having that extra money, we have extra money, right?
So we really do need to end this meeting at 8:30, and I believe that we have the financial people who want to continue to talk. We're obviously going to have more conversations about the closeout of the middle school project and the upcoming bits, and it will probably require a standalone meeting where we can stay here until midnight if we have to.
It needs to be tonight yet, while they're here.
Well, they're going to have to come to another meeting, sure. I mean, we've got decisions to make, and we can't make those decisions today. So those decisions are going to require another meeting.
We need a copy of that.
I agree with that. It would be very nice to have copies of your presentation. But anyway, thank you for being here, and I want I'm sorry, is it PFM? I want to give you all a chance to talk about where we are with budgets.
Thank you all, and hopefully the presentation that we're going to discuss tonight, and I'll go quickly because I know we're behind on time, will help as you formulate your questions for your design team, get you oriented around how much money is possible to spend within kind of the parameters that you had previously set for the project. So my name is Melissa Hughes, and I'm here from PFM. I'm joined with Brandy McClendon, and our team lead is Jamie Doyle. She sends her regards. She's not able to be here tonight. I'm going to speak from the handout in front of you. I find hard copies to be excellent. first page is an interest rate chart for the municipal bond market index. You may be hearing in the news that the Federal Reserve is raising short-term interest rates, that short-term interest rates are much higher. And you can see that on that top graph where the short-term interest rates, the yield curve is inverted. That means in your construction funds and in your fund balance, you are earning pretty good interest. That interest that you looked at and talked about earlier, that's because that short-term end of the curve has gone up. However, the long-term end of the curve, the rate that you'll borrow at, is at historic averages over the last 30 years. So what we have right now is we have an inverted yield curve environment where you can actually borrow at a slightly lower rate than what you can invest at. So that's really advantageous, and we had that environment when we did kind of the next tranche of borrowing in earlier this year in 2023. So that's helpful, as you're wrapping your head around, ooh, I'm hearing a lot of bad things in the news. It's not all bad in our market. So the scenario that we're going to illustrate tonight, and this is just an illustration, shows you borrowing an additional $25 million of borrowing. It assumes that you have $405,000 of 2022 bond proceeds and $361,000 of interest to be carried forward to new projects. So those are the same numbers that you talked about earlier. And you have approximately $10 million of 2023 bond proceeds available to be spent on your projects. I'm going to skip all the bullet points page there in the interest of time. We're going to go to your debt summary. What this page shows is on the top half of the page, this is your gross principal and interest, so what you've promised the bondholders that you'll pay. The bottom half of the page is net of state reimbursement. You can see there at the bottom of the page it says PE. You get state reimbursement on a couple of your older loans. And so that column 16, that's the number we always have in our head as we consider what the district has available. And you'll notice here, right now, your high point looks like it's $1.9 million. But if you've been on the board, you might remember they used to have a higher number in your budget. And the district has done a phenomenal job of maintaining that higher number in your budget. And that's very important because what we're doing is we're filling in the new debt service within what you already have budgeted. So that's kind of the crux, one of our main financing strategies. So we're just filling right in. Page 4.
Can I?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm really sorry.
No, it's okay.
And this is just so that someone who can barely balance a checkbook can understand what you're saying. In other words, we've kind of been making credit card payments at more than what we really owe, and now we're gonna go up to what we've been paying, so that the payment stays the same, but we've just been paying more than we needed to for however many months.
You haven't been paying more than you needed to. You've been budgeting it, and you've been moving it to your fund balance, which is like doubly good.
Okay.
But that's the right way to think about it.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. So the point there is you're going to add a lot of new debt service, and it shouldn't feel hard because you've already got it in there. Might feel hard, the budget might feel hard for a million other reasons, right? So page 4, this is an illustration of what we call a draw schedule. And I think that looking at this might be helpful for some of this conversation. So these are numbers from 2 weeks ago that SiteLogic prepared for us. And they're not going to correspond, I think, to what you looked at tonight because I think you've made some design deducts in between now and then. That's okay. The point is to help you understand how we look at all of these big picture uses that you need, and then we put it together with all the money. And so what this does is it starts back in May and says, okay, how much money did we have left from our 2022 bond proceeds? I'm looking here in columns 12 and 13. And you can see that $400,000 number and that $361,000 number. Those should sound familiar. Then in June, we went and got the 2023 borrowing. So you've committed the first $10 million of financing. You have it, it's in your bank account, it's earning interest. In column 13, because those short-term rates have risen so much, we're earning meaningful interest earnings. And so we're assuming that those meaningful interest earnings, they're going to do some project for you. And we're illustrating that at 3.5%. That's very conservative. But we don't know what the Federal Reserve will do over this course of this almost 3-year draw schedule, so we want to be conservative for this purpose. We'll figure out the actual amount of interest earnings when we get to the end. Okay? And your financing plan is designed to allow for that reconciliation process. Because we've done a multiple step financing process, and each step we take and we look at it and say, what makes sense based on what we know now? What decisions has the board made? Okay? You can see all those purposes and some estimated numbers, and we'll continue to get numbers from, say, Logic, from the administration, as you make decisions. These will change. We've estimated some cost of issuance, and we've estimated the bond issues. So this is an important tool for letting us figure out how much money we need to borrow ultimately, because we want to let that interest do some work for us. Page number 5 is an illustration of an updated financing scenario. You'll notice there in the yellow, your 2022 budgeted local effort. I made mention earlier of how you had a higher number budgeted and you've continued to maintain that. You could see that number right there. It's almost 3.4 million. So that's the number we have in our head when we're looking at column 17. How much budgeted local effort we're going to get up to when we get out to the end of the project. The blue column, that was the 2022 borrowing. The red column, that was the borrowing that was done earlier this year, and you locked in low interest rates on both of those financings. We're illustrating here for this illustration 2 more financing steps. A $10 million issuance in 2024 and a $15 million issuance in 2025. As you make decisions, get bids in, get further down the line on your draw schedule, we'll figure out what that final borrowing step needs to be. That'll be the balancer, okay? If you make decisions to bring the project in lower, 2 million, we'll lower that. It will result in a lower debt service in column 17. If project bid comes in higher, or they don't come in higher, and you say, we really want that $2.8 million gym because we think it's going to do amazing things for our kids, we'll update the financing plan accordingly. Does that make sense? So the number that you need to be focused on here, a couple numbers. First, I'm in the black columns here, columns 5, 16, and 17. We're borrowing roughly $35 million for the red, green, and orange steps. That's the total of those 3 steps. A little more than $18 million of that amortizes within the first 20 years, and we care about that because the ESCO component of the project has to be financed within the first 20 years. Based on what we've seen so far, should be good to go there.
ESCO and GISA
are the same thing.
Same thing.
2 terms, same thing. We have about $14 million of the financing that's going out a little bit longer than that. In column 16, you can see the additional local effort we're adding on there. And then in column 17, you can see the estimated new total debt service. So if you're comparing that roughly $3.4 million you have in the budget, based on these estimates, we're going to be beneath that budget on a debt service basis, which is how we've been instructed to think about the project. Okay? Things that can change this. Interest rates will move up and down. Lower interest rates are good for you. Higher interest rates are bad. We think that these estimates are good right now. Interest earnings. Those short-term rates, those are good. Short-term rates being higher are good. Short-term interest rates being lower is bad. So more higher short-term interest rates for a longer period of time, you'll get more interest earnings. We will issue less bonds in the last step. And lastly, the decisions that are made around, what are you financing? How much are you financing? That will ultimately influence that last step. Let's talk about timing. When the board feels ready, they could consider authorizing the financing team to proceed with the series of 2024 bonds. And we're assuming that there'll be a bank qualified issue because those get you slightly lower interest rates and a slightly more flexible 5-year call feature. Okay, and that's part of the financing plan, is to use those strategies wherever possible. In January, you could discuss and consider the motion. In February, you could consider your maximum parameters resolution. That's your legal debt incurring resolution. And then we could sell bonds as soon as March the 4th and settle 35 days later. If you're not ready to proceed on that timeline, it's okay. This just gives you an illustration of how long it takes from when you say go to when you get the money in your account. Any questions? Because I try to go really fast.
Can I ask another dumb one?
Yes.
All right. Just to summarize, it sounds like what you're saying is we could borrow to complete the projects that we are hoping to complete in the next few years, but still basically maintain our same payment.
That's the goal. And that assumes that you do projects in the amounts that are illustrated here.
Right. If we stay in the numbers that you've listed here, because of Christy's a miracle worker, we can finance these projects and still be paying about the same that we've been paying for finance all along.
That's the goal. Yeah.
Questions, comments?
So when come next, what are your dates here? You'll come to the superintendent and Christie. They'll come to us and say, authorize this and this, right?
Yep.
That's how it works?
Yep.
Okay.
So thank you for being here, PFM. Thank you. I forgot your name already.
Melissa, it's okay.
Thank you, Melissa, for being here, and appreciate the update and appreciate the information. It's clear that this board is going to need to have a standalone committee of the whole meeting to deal with facilities. Maybe there's additional information to help the board with the closeout of the middle school project, but I think also our primary focus needs to be on moving forward and deciding what we are going to do for the future beyond what we have already committed to. So I'll leave it to the superintendent to schedule that meeting. SiteLogic, we're absolutely going to need you in attendance at that meeting to help us with that, and we're going to need a time that is not next to a regular board meeting so that we can continue for as long as we need to.
With all these things going on, she needs bond information, and they're going to need information. I think the sooner that we have this meeting and discuss this, the better, to get it out the way, so we know where we stand.
Well, the one thing I think we need to add to this is we need to give Christy enough time to find out what our cash flow needs, see if, as we draw down on the bonds, whether, since I don't know if we're in deficit spending, but I believe we are, what we can actually afford cash flow wise, so we don't go into an actual deficit spending.
Well, we're talking about bond, aren't we?
Well, the bond, as we draw on the bond, our cash needed to pay our debt service increases.
Yeah.
But then we have our general cash flow needs. I need Christy to give me a green light on whether we'll have the cash flow to support all the bond borrowing.
So Kurt, is what what I believe you're asking is you're saying, hey, we've been socking away this extra money each year that would have been used for debt service, but it hasn't. And ultimately, that money has sort of helped us balance the budget in some years that we've been over.
That is correct.
And so you're a little concerned that by now using this money not to balance the budget, but instead to pay for debt service, that we're not actually going to be able to balance the budget.
That is correct.
Yeah, well, that is a conversation that definitely needs to happen. All right, well, thank you. I'm not sure when the next meeting is going to be. It's tricky because we've got the holiday week coming up, but I will leave it to our administration to schedule a meeting with SiteLogic and all of us. So thank you all for being here. All right, you got 15 seconds to catch your breath.
Kim.
These two had to make me cry. Like, seriously.
They are somewhere.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. There's your gavel, bang. Welcome to this Planning and Action meeting of the Shippensburg Area School District. Thank you for being here. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jim Bard.
Here.
Mr. Levi Kressler.
Here.
Dr. Michael Lyman.
Here.
Mr. Kurt Noggle.
Here.
Mr. Fred Scott.
I think he's here.
Yeah.
Marking player.
Mr. Charlie Suiters.
Here.
Mrs. Becky Wolfinger.
Here.
Mrs. Steph Eberly.
Here.
Dr. Nathan Goetz.
Here.
Mr. Aryan Gaunkar.
Here.
Miss Lily Kell.
All right, if you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As we begin our deliberations this evening, let us once again be reminded of our duty to represent all of the children of the school community, regardless of age, sex, race, or creed, and regardless of need or ability. A reminder that this meeting is being live streamed and uploaded to the district's YouTube channel. Now we please have a moment of silence to reflect on our thoughts, plans, and actions on behalf of the students of the Shippensburg Area School District, as well as in remembrance of
Pamela Jo Perry, who is a 1980 graduate. Janet Omert, who's a 1949 graduate. And Sandra Darman, a 1970 graduate. Thank you. The board has had 2 executive sessions since our last meeting. We met last Thursday to discuss some legal issues regarding contracts and real estate. We met before this meeting as well at 6:30 in regards to some legal issues and personnel. All right, are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, sir. Just a clarification, discussion agenda 6G, updated amendum to agreement with Education Staffing Services, ESS, originally listed incorrectly as Effective School Solutions, which is also ESS. So verifying our ESSs.
All right, but as it is correct on the current agenda, right?
Yes,
That's
sir.
before us? Okay, great. All right, is there a motion to approve the agenda before us?
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Ms. Wolfinger.
Second.
Who was the second? Second by Mr. Scott. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. All right, that brings us to our first citizen comment period. I believe we have one person who has indicated that they would like to comment, Mr. Don Hildinger. Just a reminder to Don knows, and anyone else who may be commenting, to address all comments to the board as a whole and to make sure that they're in the form of a statement. Questions will be taken under advisement. Responses to questions will be offered after due deliberation and will be provided by the superintendent at the direction of the board within a few days of the board meeting. Everyone's allowed 3 minutes. Comments relative to private student matters or personnel issues should be directed to the appropriate school authority outside of this meeting. The presiding officer reserves the right to interrupt or terminate a participant's statement if the statement is too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, obscene, or irrelevant. Thank you.
I think all of that was longer than my remarks. So, first of all, I did want to thank Dr. Goetz for giving me the opportunity to speak during this first comment period. Because I came here tonight to thank Charlie Souters for his service and commitment to the district and the community. And I'm going to read some prepared remarks because I want to make sure I get everything into my 3 minutes of allotted time here. Anyone who has ever served on a school board knows what a challenging position it can be. And anyone who has served on this board in the past, I think it's 16 years, is that correct? Good. Knows how Charlie epitomizes what it means to be a respected and accomplished school board member. I served with Charlie for 8 of the 12 years that I was on this board. I was always in awe of the number of people who came to Charlie for advice or used him as a sounding board or approached him with concerns. This was across the spectrum. Teachers, staff, administrators, community members, and fellow board members. In my opinion, I think they came to Charlie for 2 reasons. First, they knew they would hear his honest opinion. Charlie didn't try to blow smoke or tell you what he thought you wanted to hear. You didn't necessarily approach Charlie for affirmation, but you wanted to know what he was hearing and seeing and what his take was on all of that. Second, Charlie was most concerned about what was fair, but more importantly, what was equitable. Whether it was a contract negotiation, a student discipline issue, or a policy issue, Charlie was always concerned that decisions were consistent with past practice when appropriate, that they were correcting previous wrongs. Charlie didn't play favorites, and that was key to his ability to connect with all those various constituencies within the district. The same level of respect he had here was mirrored at the Career Center, JOC. Charlie never took on any named leadership positions. There was no doubt about the quiet leadership he commanded. In some cases, those with a long tenure in a position tend to be just tolerated. Not Charlie. His opinions were sought not just because of his experience, but because that experience was backed up by a pride in that school, a strong desire to see it and the students succeed. Thank you, Charlie, and I have no doubt your phone will continue to ring. I know when that 5:30 or 6 o'clock call comes into you, you know who it's from. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Appreciate those comments. The board has a little bit of something for Charlie a little bit later on. Appreciate that. Is there anyone else who would like to comment regarding agenda items? Come on up. I got a heads up that you emailed me, but I just forgot about checking it during
It wasn't
meeting,
until like
so.
7 o'clock, so I apologize. Okay, so you have to forgive me. I am running on like zero.
So if you please just tell us your name and if you're a member that, or if you live in the district or not.
Okay, my name is Carrie Burrows. I do live in the district borough of Shippensburg. Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak out of turn. I have occasionally spoken in front of your board, started during COVID. There was so much negativity that I thought I would highlight some of the amazing things that our school district does to help drown out the negativity. I've spoken about everything from bus drivers to our custodial staff to our teachers. I've been a participating member of this district for 31 of my 45 years, 13 as a student, 18 as a parent. Ironically, I started at this very school when kindergarten was housed in the high school, right back there. Although I've not always agreed with decisions or the directions that this district and board has gone, I've always felt at peace by my community and neighbors, knowing that we have loved this town and bleed maroon and gray, and almost always seem to do the right thing. I do apologize. I am so tired, so please forgive me. The last 8 to 10 years have been very trying in our country, where political ideology has taken over the narrative, divided families and communities, turned neighbors into enemies, and have made many of us lose sight as to what is truly important in our community, resulting in simply judging others on the letter that accompanies their voter registration or who they supported for president. It has removed empathy and compassion from communities such as ours, and I think it has been heartbreaking for all of us. This was never more evident than during the tumultuous years when COVID was running rampant. That is when I first met Becky Wolfinger. She and I were on opposite sides of the virtual school issue, but I did take notice that while her pleas were passionate, it was centered around the needs of her children and not about the political narrative that was spreading like a cancer. The first time I met Becky face-to-face was at band camp. She nervously approached me as I was setting up breakfast for the band kiddos. She told me it was her son's first day of band camp, and even though he was a sophomore, band camp was canceled his freshman year. She was hopeful that her son would find his home within the band. It was just a big ball of mama nerves. I adored her immediately, finding solace in another mom, asking for a little bit of reassurance like all moms need and so often don't seek out. Becky is one of a kind. She is that person you come across 1 or 2 times in your life, immediately and forever having an impact. Simply put, she is a superhero. Rising from a mom in the audience who was challenging the school board and administrators to hear her pleas as a mother, to a school board member who was loved by teachers, administrators, parents, and students. Let me repeat that. She was absolutely loved by administrators, teachers, parents, and students. She immersed herself in this district, meeting with teachers and administrators about the needs of schools and the students, interacting with the students, watching, listening, and loving every single minute of it. She took it upon herself to learn about every facet of the school district, from athletics to arts to music, to the special needs of some of our students, to the frustrations of our teachers due to lack of resources, and just as importantly, listening to the parents. She problem-solved, often finding compromise and triaging the numerous needs of this district. She celebrated students' successes and shed tears on their failures. I hope that this board will remember why we live in Shippensburg, to not allow fear and false truths spread into our future generations' lives, to focus on the needs of our community, and to recognize the noise that is happening on the national and state levels is just that, noise. Open your eyes and hearts to what the real needs of our district are, not what a talking head is telling us to be fearful of. Children have enough obstacles and realities that they have to face every day, realities that even one generation ago, my generation, would have seemed unimaginable. As she leaves this as a member of this board, please remember her legacy. Remember the woman who was able to be loved by all, the woman who researched, listened, and was present for literally every single matter that came in front of this board during her tenure.
She left her political affiliations, her children's individual needs at the door, and she became the community representative. She opened her ears, eyes, and hearts to the needs of this community. We all need a little Becky in our life, and I hope this board will continue in her legacy of students and parents first. Thank you, Becky.
Thank you very much for that, Ms. Burrows. Are there anyone else who would like to comment in regards? Sure, yes, Aaron.
Darren Donovan, I am a resident of the district. On December 4th, I will be taking my seat as a board director. My first request is that a walkthrough be set up for all board members, staff, administration, the Greyhound Foundation, a rep from Site Logic, etc. Anybody that has involvement with the high school project before we make any decisions on what is in and what is out. In order to make a wise decision, we all need to be on the same page in what our wants and needs are as a district, and to be 100% clear on what we are getting or not getting. During the walkthrough, I am requesting someone to accompany us and answer any and all questions pertaining to project cost, time frame for projects, recommendations, etc., so that communication between all parties involved is crystal clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Donovan. Any other comments? Okay, all right, well, that brings us to board reports. Mr. Gonkar.
Thank you. The Art Honor Society raised funds by selling Halloween-themed pins and magnets from October 25th through Halloween. On Thursday, October 26th at 7 p.m. in this library, candidates who hope to be elected to a position on our school board helped answer public questions. A club fair was held on October 27th during Flex. Many high school clubs had set up stands for new admissions. The Student versus Teacher Basketball Championship was held on October 30th. The Interactive Media Club started a Wii bowling tournament on October 31st. The Focus on Finance career trip was held on November 2nd. Students interested in finance could explore careers in this field through the trip. The FFA collected 176 toys for Weston's Toy Drive. These toys will be donated to Penn State's Children's Hospital. The Woodworking Club hosted a hat day on Tuesday, November 7th to raise money for their club. The Math AMC exam was held on November 8th in the high school auditorium. It will also be held tomorrow on November 14th for other students interested in completing the exam. The Psychoelectric career trip will also be held tomorrow, November 14th, for students interested in exploring electrical apprenticeships and careers at Psychoelectric. Both of our JV and varsity high school quiz bowl teams won against CD East on October 23rd. Later, the varsity team beat Trinity and Pennsboro high schools teams on October 30th. Also, just a few hours ago, they won against Central Dauphin and Bishop McDevitt. For the middle school high school student council is partnering up with the high school student council to collect items for the Ronald McDonald House. The middle school Cherrydale fundraiser has been a huge success with almost 40,000 sold. The middle school holiday hangout is November 17th after high school with games, dancing, face painting, and bracelet making. That's it.
All right, thank you. All right, I don't believe there's a Career Center report. Is that correct? Because we met.
Meetings this week.
Yeah, okay, great. Transportation Committee?
Yep. Transportation Committee met, discussed some old business like routing, updates on routing, and the possibility of additional buses. And then we discussed the potential, we're looking into the topic that came up at our last meeting about a potential activity bus for kids for after-school activities and transportation. Discussed the oncoming RFP that's going to sound like go out for the busing contract that's going to be expiring at some point in the near future. And then also there's some community members there that had a conversation about student behaviors and such on buses, and it's a good general conversation. It was productive. So that's it.
Is there some consensus about the, amongst the Transportation Committee on the activity bus?
I think everybody was, I would say that was there, seemed to be okay with at least looking into
The needs,
Yeah.
what the need would look like, what activities, would we be utilizing it for?
So I guess
More
that's
information.
something for administration to decide if they want to work into the budget for
They're still working
the coming year.
Correct, looking at numbers and the logistics of it to get back to the board on that.
I do have a question, transportation related, real quick,
Sure.
if I can. Have you been made aware of many of our student walkers that are walking up to 2 miles from the middle school, all the way over to Roxbury?
Can't say that I have.
We haven't received any emails from parents stating that they were walking that distance, but that is not policy.
Yeah, so I've had a couple of conversations recently with a couple of parents that live out that way, and their students are walking from the middle school all the way to Roxbury, kind of almost near where the treatment center's at. And so in my mind, you're crossing a lot of major roads, and as a parent, it just makes me cringe even thinking about it. I wouldn't walk it myself. So I don't know if just some kind of like investigation into that.
If you can give us some specifics, we can gladly look into that.
Safety and Security Committee?
So the Safety Committee met on November 1st at 4 o'clock. All of the committee members were present along with Mrs. DeLong, Mr. Lindenmuth, Mrs. Luffy, and Chief Young. Agenda items that were discussed were the Safe Schools funding process, which can only be described as stuck. The House and legislature are at an impasse. Mr. Lindenmuth will be completing the Train the Trainer course on December 5th, and this will help alleviate the burden of one person being responsible for the staff training, especially with the new Act 55 mandates. We received an update on the camera project. The elementary cameras are active. There was discussion regarding some of the old cameras not on the new server, and that the server being past its life expectancy. Dr. Stevens is working with Triangle to get those switched over as soon as possible. In the past, the cameras fell under the maintenance department, and the committee didn't think that this had made sense. Both Mr. Kreitz and Dr. Stevens both agreed that the cameras would be better suited under the technology department. So maintenance did do a gentle handoff to technology department, or was working on that gentle handoff. Chief Young also provided an SRO update. He and his staff continue to make positive, meaningful relationships with students, and he shared that there's one student that waits for him most days, and Chief Young walks him to his classroom. These were one of those feel-good moments that show the comfortability of this with the students with having armed officers in the buildings. Shippensburg PD is still experiencing staffing concerns. When an SRO is unavailable, Chief Young does have officers driving around campus and walking the halls. He's doing his best with the resources he has and is hopeful to hire more officers at the beginning of the year.
I have a question I want to say to you. We, as a financial thing, do we pay for every officer they hire from now on?
No, sir.
Because we pay, they got one academy now we're paying for.
We have a flat contract with them for them to provide us with officers. I'd have to look at the contract.
Would you,
Christy, does this ring
I
in?
don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to look too. I just know that we do pay. If they become an officer that's selected to be an SRO, they have to go through that, I think, NASRO training, if I'm saying that right. So we would pay for that if they would identify them. But I don't know about what you're saying.
I thought that we already paid for the first, like the 3 that we had agreed on, so
That's for
anything
just,
beyond that.
that's for SRO, but any new officer they hire to become an officer, we pay certain percent. Could someone check for me, please? And also,
Sure.
Check with the cars too. Are we paying for every car or just one car? I'd like to, because they got a car now we paid for, they're using now.
One car.
One car, but
One vehicle.
do they ever get another car? Do we have to pay for
No,
that?
we pay for what's in the contract.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
We're within the contract. If there are additional officers trained, it still would be within the bounds of that.
That's our part. I have no problem with it. I just I know they hired one on board, and I think we're paying for it. Okay.
All right, and now curriculum report by Dr. Donat.
You said it right.
Good evening, all. I have 3 items for you tonight. The first is to report that last week we had a very successful English language learner family night here at the district, where our English language learners came in, brought their families, they had game night, and they were able to meet teachers and be connected with resources that we have in the district to support those families. Today, during the day, the in-service day, our faculty received meaningful professional development opportunities. Our elementary and middle school teachers received training on a mathematics program that allowed them to look at data analytics to better inform their instruction directed individually for students. Additionally, our science, language arts, and I've got to think through all of these, music and art departments met and were engaged in curriculum writing. Those activities will continue through this year, and we'll have curriculum to present to the board over the summer for your approval, hopefully. Finally, the third thing on my list for today is the Pennsylvania Department of Education released the Pennsylvania Future Ready Index. There's a PowerPoint in your agenda. This information is reflective of the 2022-23 academic year student data. It's important to notice, if you go to the next slide, please, it's public reporting for all Pennsylvania schools, and there's data indicators in 3 different categories. The state assessment measures, those measures include the PSSAs and the Keystone data, and then we also have on-track data, which are things like attendance, and then the third one is the school level data. And that includes information such as demographics and career ready and graduation rates. And I'd like to give you a quick overview of those now. This is publicly available that you can go in and dive into the data further on your own. Next slide. The first thing to report is with our English language arts. The state average for scores on the PSSA and Keystones, they calculate at 54.5. And if you look, I've got the dotted line across to show where that state average is. What you're going to see is that our high school, James Byrd and Nancy Grayson, exceeded the state average, and the middle school and intermediate school come very close to that state average. One aspect of our Future Ready Index is it not only gives us a snapshot in time, it also provides information on the district growth over time. And I wanted you to see that 3 of the buildings have that blue star indicating that we've exceeded our growth expectations, and 1 school met the standard for growth as it's set by the state. Next slide, please. With our math and algebra scores, again, the state average, you're going to see that at 38.3, and you're going to see 4 of our schools exceeded that state average. It looks like you should be alarmed with 2 of the schools, the middle school and the high school. It's actually a reflection of our COVID years, and I want to make sure to highlight this, that it's the students who were in algebra during their 7th grade year during COVID, the Keystone exam was waived for them. So that top group of performing students was pulled out of the Keystones, and that information was waived. So what you're seeing is the general math classes there, and that's going to look like our average is lower, and it's simply because the higher performing students have been pulled out of the data set. So we do have a blue star in that category, indicating that our math instruction is actually growing with that basic set of students. So that's good news. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. For science and biology, the state average is 58.9. 2 of our schools are exceeding that, and 2 schools are approaching it. All of the schools are either meeting or exceeding our state growth.
Dr. Donata, if I
Yes,
could
sir.
just interrupt for a second.
Please.
Anytime you see a blue star, that means that our kids are outperforming where they were predicted to be. So that we're getting, typically it's measured by a year's growth. That means our staff and students are getting more than a year's growth with a student. So blue stars, blue is phenomenal.
Big deal.
And even though some of the percentages may not be where we want them, those kids are moving faster than they should be if there's a blue star in those columns.
Something to be very proud of.
It's on this slide, sorry,
Mhm.
over here. Are we seeing the same, is there, because the high school and middle school are lower, is there the COVID issue with science
Part
and
of that is
biology
that
as well?
some of the data set was pulled out, yes.
Okay, so I was trying to, as I was looking at this earlier, I was trying to figure out why our high school and middle school were struggling, but it's just a function of missing data.
The superintendent had almost a heart
Okay,
attack
good.
when the 21 came in, and I was on the phone because it had gone from 70 to 21 in 1 year. So having that explanation makes sense.
Great. Moving on to the regular attendance slide. This is excellent news to me. The state average for attendance is 73.9, and we are exceeding that in every building. And as you all know, students must be present to learn and to be successful. This puts us in a great position to help students. And the next slide, please. This is looking at the career standards. This is the information that you heard briefly from Mrs. Akers last month with her programs of being able to get students to add to their portfolio of different aspects of career development. And you're going to see that the state average is 89.6, and we're hitting 100% and meeting those benchmarks in 2 of our districts, and we're in the high 90s for the other schools. So again, excellent news in this regard. Going on to our graduation rate, the state average graduation rate is 87%. Shippensburg is at 94.5%. So I know you had asked before, how are we doing relatively? These numbers are showing us that we're doing pretty decent relatively, and it's a good time. The last thing I wanted to share with you is what happens to our students after high school. According to the state data, we have 40.4% of our students going on to secondary education, going on to a post-secondary education such as college or vocational schools. 4% are entering the 42% are entering the workforce, and 9% are enlisting in the military. So that's a big data dump. I will be receiving more education and a deeper dive on this next week. If any board member is curious in investigating that data more thoroughly, please give me a call. I'll be happy to help. Thank you for your time.
Just board members, we wanted to get this in front of you as it's public knowledge, and so we'll be back with more granular stuff. We just wanted to make sure you were apprised of this as it was available. Thank you.
Quick comment. I really appreciate having this stuff. I really like this kind of data because it focuses on the kinds of things that are our real mission. I mean, we have to argue about building projects and stuff, but if we're not seeing, that our students are learning something, then all the rest of that doesn't really matter. And I'm sure we could do a deeper dive, and there's things I'm instantly curious about, right? I'm really glad that you made a comparison to the state level average, but then, Pennsylvania is a big and diverse state, and it might be a little more, helpful to compare ourselves to other Cumberland County or Franklin County districts. And I guess that can be done, like the data set that you have probably has that available. And then, of course, like timeline data, like trending sort of stuff. And even while I want to see that stuff, and I'm sure that you're going to look at it and you're going to allow us to look at it if we want to, just as you said, I hesitate a little bit because then it makes it seem like it's all about testing data, right? And anyone who knows testing data knows that, it de-emphasizes some of the most important things that we do in education. And so it's like, on the one hand, you've got these good numbers that you can do lots of stuff with, but on the other hand, you have to remember that those numbers don't really tell the whole story. Anyway, but as we dive deeper, I'd certainly like to see more context and nuance because, I don't know, that's sort of what we're doing here.
Absolutely. This was the surface dive to not overwhelm you, but to give you a snapshot, and the additional information is readily available for you at any point in time.
great. Thank you.
I have two quick questions for
Yes,
you. So how many families were in attendance for the ELL night?
I think, Mrs. DeLong, help me out. I want to say 5.
Yeah, I think there were close to 30 people altogether.
Yeah.
Okay. And then do we have a special resource on the website, kind of listing out those resources to make it easier for our families to find?
I can
On
look
the
into
school
that.
district
I'm
site?
not aware of it, but I can look into it, and if it's not, we can look into building it. Our issue with that is the translation service of it, because we have packets of information that were translated into very specific languages. Putting it on the web, we just have to figure out how to do that.
Right.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, superintendent's report.
Thank you. Enrollment report is available. We are, big picture, 113 students from our 2022 point in time last year, with 1,139 students at our elementaries, elementary K to 3, 551 at SACE. And our secondary numbers through the middle school are 850, with the high school clocking in at 1,123 with 23 students in various placements. We were dipping close to 3,700. We've come back a little bit from that for a grand total of 3,686.
Would it be possible on this, I know we're kind of concerned about sort of enrollment trends, and just a snapshot every month doesn't give us sort of that trend data. Would it be possible to get that with these enrollments? Because
we absolutely can do that.
I appreciate that you sort of audibly give us sort of where it compares to the month before or the year before, but if that could be on here, that would help us sort of see where things are going, because we have lots of tough decisions to make about
Absolutely.
enrollment.
Student activity account balances: senior high, $84,226.87. Middle school, $41,105.14. At SACE, they have $1,400,997.17. James Byrd, $3,075.72. Nancy Grayson, $11,528.29. I have one more item. Obviously, with a change of the coming, the two speakers did an amazing job, and were far more eloquent than I ever could have been to recognize, the contributions of Mrs. Wolfinger and Mr. Suiters. I did want to take a moment to, on behalf of the board, in recognition of 16 years of service to this district and this board, present Mr. Suiters with a plaque of appreciation on behalf of the district.
Somebody gonna take a picture?
I'll get one.
Somebody take a picture and put it in the newspaper?
Let me get out of the way.
Get that for her? Put it in the newspaper.
I'll send it to you.
Just very much appreciated working with both of you. And Charlie, certainly your wisdom and guidance will be missed by me personally, so thank you. Donation report, Hub City Club, $1,000 donation for Veterans Day program. I'm still working on getting a number for the cost of that. Kiwanis Club of Shippensburg, $200 to support the Veterans Day program. Volvo, $500 for the high school facility dog. Ambassador Club. Rebecca Myers, Logan 350 Elite Mat Cutter for use to cut mats for district students' artwork. It's a $145 value. Hub City Club, $1,000 donation to support middle school PBIS. Indoco Inc. For Sam's PBIS Spiritware sales profit to be used for the middle school PBIS program. It's a $228.75 donation. An anonymous donation to the PBIS Spiritware sales for a value of $87. Thanks to the American Legion for $200 donation to support the high school PBIS program. Volvo with 2 monetary donations of $700 each in appreciation of the upcoming performances of the Volvo Light Show and providing transportation for the girls' basketball team that had to make an adjustment. Scott, Kathy, Derek, and Devin Goodhart, $100 monetary donation in memory of Wayne F. Craig III to support the Shippensburg FFA. McInroy and Sheffer People's Trust, a $500 monetary donation in memory of Mary McInroy's Sheriff to support interscholastic academic competitions for district students. And finally, the Nancy Grayson PTO, 30 library-bound book box set for use in the library with a value of $874.37. That concludes my report.
Thank you. All right, that brings us to the consent agenda. Item 4A is approval of the minutes from the last meeting. Item 4B is our various financial reports and budget reports. Oh, right, so that's just the fourth part of that, okay. Item 4C, policies for second reading and approval. These have gone through the policy committee and are recommended. This is second read. Item 4E is a request to form a new club. Ms. Keller, the ESL teacher, is requesting to form a multicultural club at the high school. The purpose of this new club is to unify and educate members about one another's cultures through presentations and fun-filled activities. The club would be open to all students. The administration recommends approval of this club. Item 4F is a title change and updated job description for our Director of Technology. The job description is attached. And item 4G is a title change and updated job description for the Executive Assistant to the Superintendent. Would anyone like to take any of these items separately, item 4A through 4G?
Yeah, I would 4B.
All right, 4B separately. Any others? All right, is there a motion to approve item 4A and items 4C through 4G?
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Ms. Wolfinger.
Second.
Second by Ms. Eberly. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. All right, that brings us to item 4B. Is there a motion to approve item 4B?
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Ms. Wolfinger.
Second.
Second by Mr. Kressler. Discussion.
Yeah, every time we go through the financial thing, we say Christy does a great job of work. Are we looking at how much problem is this bringing to, how much work is this, Christy, on you doing this financial report, this limited work you're doing?
These reports themselves, if you're talking about what's in the board reports,
No,
I have,
but the whole thing. You sit there from point A to point B for you, workload, total workload of finances. But this is only just different things.
so if you're talking about the job in its entirety,
Yes,
it's overwhelming.
Yes. And so I think we need to do something to alleviate that. Maybe some situations we're not getting information because you don't have the time to give it to us. Because this tells me nothing. This report doesn't tell me. I'd like to know how much is the fund balance. How much expenses have we had during a certain time frame?
Well, I would, to kind of piggyback off of what Fred was talking about, I remember Dwayne Burt and I sitting here many of times saying, we just spent $150,000 tonight. We just spent $75,000 tonight. So, like, I think that the report that Fred is asking for is kind of like the check register of what we have in the account, and to kind of with an update of like, this is what we've spent, and like some of those updates so that we know how much money are in those accounts so that we can balance the house checkbook, or like to keep an eye on it, versus when it comes to budget season and certain committee meetings.
Are you referring to like unbudgeted expenses, or you want to see how budgeted, like how each expense falls into each line item in the budget too?
No. I like we used to know about the fund balance. Does anybody know what the fund balance is?
Well, we do get regular updates on the fund balance, right?
Who?
And it's coming budget season, so we will get those updates.
Between budget season, that's a year. I'd like to know what's going on during the weeks, months, if it's going on.
Fred, if you remember in facilities, we had asked Christy to give us a thing because she thought she needed some help in
Yes,
the office.
that's what I'm bringing up.
I think she's working on that. I haven't seen it yet, but I think that we were looking for her recommendations as to the help she needs.
Well, that's going to come from the superintendent, not from Christie.
Well, we just happened to talk about it in facilities.
Yes.
So currently, you don't have an issue with what we're about to vote on as far as the current finance. It's more so the position or.
This don't tell me. This don't
staffing
tell me.
concern.
This don't tell me nothing.
This is what we're paying. This is what we've paid. Not maybe what's,
Financial
This is-
financial reports.
yeah, like, but it doesn't say what's left,
Yes.
but it is items that were budgeted for.
Okay, I had no problem. Those are expenses. I had no problem, but I like to know what fund balance is and other parts of the budget.
Well, maybe we do need to have regular updates on fund balance in the same way that we have enrollment reports or other sorts of updates. I'm not sure how regular is regular, but keep those fresh in our mind as to what those accounts look like.
That's all I'm asking for. That, you know, it ain't got to be monthly. It's a quarterly. It's just something we got. We see.
So Christy, am I correct in assuming that you need help, another person in the office?
You are correct.
How can this board manage to get this looked at?
So that would be through the budget process, Mr. Noggle.
Okay. When can we do that?
Budget season is nigh upon us within the next couple months.
As administrators give their needs, like the top, everyone submits them, and then they bring it to the board, and then we.
Okay.
So we got to wait till March, to the budget, or to June next year. That's when. But we wait till the budget's done.
I mean, if the board were to take some action to approve a position that hasn't been budgeted, then it would be extra budget, right? It would have to come out of the fund balance or, you know, be accounted for in some other way. So, I mean,
So it could be done far sooner. To
Yes.
Dr. Goetz' point, it would be an unbudgeted expense. The best way forward would be to include it within our budget process, along with other prioritized positions that we may or may not be able to afford, but definitely need. My recommendation would be we run it through the budget process, Mr. Scott.
That's time consuming, and Christy needs help now, not later on. And I understand about the budget, but budget's just a number. We're going to add to and take from. So I would like the position looked at sooner than later. The budget, to me, the budget, everything, the budget. Budget's okay, but there are things in life that change.
I think we have to be very aware, though, that we have 11 positions that we don't know how we're going to pay for, that are currently paid through ESSER funding. And so for us to kind of pay for something now that's not budgeted and then trying to figure out how we're going to pay for 11 positions.
We don't cut 11 positions, we cut someplace else. But we need a financial report and the financials of the school district. Maybe we wouldn't have been in a position with them if we'd known better what was going on. And she's working extra time and extra days, and we're worrying about a budget? If she shuts down and don't do nothing, what kind of budget you going to get then?
We also have kids that need math coaching and reading coaching and,
But if she don't
an
figure out the money,
administrator at the middle school paid
Yeah.
out of ESSER funding.
but if she don't figure out the money, they won't get nothing.
so this is an important conversation. I don't want to cut it short, but it's
I understand.
not particularly relevant to 4B. So,
I wanted to get it out there.
yeah,
needs.
I
know.
appreciate that.
Want to vote for it?
Unless there's any other comments regarding 4B. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. All right, that brings us to item 4H, personnel, professional and support personnel. There are a number of leave of absence requests, FMLA qualifying leave of absence requests, a salary correction, approvals for professional contract status. There are a couple of resignations. I'm getting down to 8 and 9. We have folks ending their probationary period and and should achieve regular employment status. And then there are several new appointments as well, and you can see those down below, items 18 through 28. There are also some substitutes to be approved and some resignations. And then there are coaching appointments in items 33 through 37. Is there a motion to approve item 4H?
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Ms. Eberly,
Second.
second by Mr. Noggle. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, motion passes. And then item 5I, Personnel Administration. Administration recommends the approval of the following resignation. Chad Reitz, Director of Operations and Maintenance, effective December 8th, 2023. Is there a motion to approve item 4I?
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Ms. Wolfinger,
Second.
second by Mr. Scott. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, that brings us to the action agenda. Item 5A is regarding the district social media accounts. So pursuant to board policy, the board shall approve all social media accounts created or maintained as district-owned accounts, including social media. Dr. Troy Stevens, Director of Technology, oversees all social media accounts for the district and serves as the primary contact person for these accounts. I just want to be clear, is this motion to make Dr. Stevens like sort of the czar of the social media accounts, and that had not been previously the case?
I think it's to align with policy.
Oh, it's to align with policy to make, okay. So this is already the practice?
Dr. Stevens is the guru of our social medias.
For the main district one, this also officially recognizes the building ones, or like the department ones, so for the different clubs. It's got them all under, my umbrella version this year.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve item 5A?
So moved.
Motion made by Dr. Lyman,
Second.
second by Ms. Eberly. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 5B, approval to apply and accept 2 PDF food service equipment grants. So the Food Service Department is requesting approval to apply for and accept 2 food service equipment grants from the USDA. If awarded, the funds would be used to purchase 2 steamers, one for Sam's and one for Sashus. These items are not working properly or near the end of their life expectancy. Estimated cost for each steamer is $21,600. Let's see, administration recommends approval to apply and accept these grants. Should the district not receive these grants, administration is requesting authorization to purchase these items with food service funds. Is there a motion to approve item 5B?
Move to approve.
Motion made by Mr. Suiters,
Second.
second by Mr. Scott. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 5C, additional option through PennServe. So administration recommends the board provide district administration with the authority to secure a Roth option to the district's 403B plan. As I understand it, this is no cost to the district. This is just merely providing employees with additional investment opportunities for their retirement. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve item 5C?
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Ms. Eberly,
Second.
second by Dr. Lyman. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 5D, memorandum of agreement between the district and the Shippensburg Area Education Association. This MOA is regarding supplemental positions and stipends paid for yearly concerts throughout the district. The MOA with a list of items to be eliminated and added is attached. Is there a motion to approve item 5D?
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Ms. Wolfinger,
Second.
second by Dr. Lyman. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Item 5E, approval to contract with Hurley Auctions. So in order to maximize advertising capabilities, administration recommends approval to contract with Hurley Auctions of Greencastle, Pennsylvania to auction district surplus items online. So this is an online auction. All items will be posted for sale. The commission for Hurley Auctions is 25% of gross sales.
Just a reminder that we've used Hurley's auctions services in the past, and Mr. Kreitz has indicated that we are having space issues. That's why there's a little bit of urgency to.
What are they selling?
So there'll be a list generated, Mr. Bard.
So they're gonna pile all that stuff up there like they did last year up there in the field and be there for a month?
That's not the plan.
Is there a motion to approve item 5E?
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Ms. Wolfinger,
Second.
second by Mr. Scott. Any discussion? Any more questions, Mr. Bard?
No, I just know we had all them desks and stuff that sat up there forever last year, and they just like sat up there. I mean, is it stuff that's gonna be sold, or is it stuff that, I mean, they're charging you 25% to do it anyhow. Is it, are we better off donating it to somebody and just, I mean, I don't know, hauling it to the dump, but I mean.
It didn't say it was charging us 25%.
It's gross sales, Mr. Bard.
It's gross
What we
sales.
said.
The commission for Hurley is 25% of gross sales.
Whatever they sell, so I mean,
Right.
I don't know, like is there a flat rate for them?
I'm not seeing a flat rate. I'm seeing it contingent on the gross profits and a percentage of it.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, that brings us to the discussion agenda. So item 6A is an updated job description for the Director of Operations and Maintenance. Item 6B, grants for growing. Seeking approval to apply for and accept several grants. Item 6C is a request to form a new club at the high school, the Buddy Club. Item 6D, Nancy Grayson Playground Equipment. There's a final report for that. Let's see. Item 6E is in regard to substitute custodial services. I'm going to come back to this one in a minute. Item 6F, Power School Predictive Enrollment and Analytics. I guess I should have just talked about 6E. I apologize for that. So substitute custodial services, we've seen this one on the agenda before. This is to enter into a one-year agreement with Ames Janitorial Services for substitute janitorial services on an as-needed basis. This is not to fulfill full-time positions. It's just to deal with substitute issues when we cannot find substitutes the other way. You'll remember that the board previously voted down this contract, but administration wants to bring it back to our attention. Item 6F has to do with entering in an agreement with a company to help us with enrollment estimates. It's used by other other districts in the area. Item 6G is an amendment to the agreement with Education Staffing Services. Item 6H, disposal of obsolete textbooks. So, as is our practice, if there's any of these that the board would like to discuss or has additional questions on, now is an excellent time to ask.
What's it gonna cost us for that 60 per hour? I mean, I understand it's saying it's, as needed, but there's gotta be some kind of hourly rate.
It's in the
I think it's $30.
30, yeah.
Again, Mr. Bard, don't want to use it, but as I've communicated to the board, custodial services have been a challenge for us, and as they have for other districts. We've made internal changes to help alleviate that, but there are times when we don't have the ability to have a substitute in a building and rooms are going uncleaned, depending on the case. It can be more than one night, and we receive multiple complaints when that happens. So I feel like done our due diligence through the hiring process. The board's certainly helped out with increasing staff, support staff pay. This is, to my mind, the final piece of the puzzle of when we have an absolute need to use it rare and sparingly to make sure our buildings are ready the next morning for our kids.
I think I would feel more comfortable if there was a cap put on, whether if it's a monthly cost versus.
Okay.
The one thing I'd like to add maybe to this is that if we took the cost of our janitorial services with the bennies and their labor burden on top, it's probably not a lot less than $30 an hour.
I would agree. I mean, it would be approaching that, Mr. Nuggle.
Yeah, so I don't think it would be, I don't know the exact number, but wouldn't be a lot more.
Would that person be assigned to the school? Those people be assigned to the school, or
So let's just say the high school, it's probably more apt to say an elementary school. That custodian's off sick, is on vacation. We can't find a replacement. We've tried to shuffle internally. I mean, that's the other part I think people have to understand is that, we don't just go, we don't go right to this. It may be pulling if there are two custodians at the high school, maybe reassigning one to the elementary for that evening. But there are often times when we have multiple custodians out that really put strain on the system. So everything we can check internally happens first before we would go to this.
Have we ever looked at, I know Nicole and I were supposed to have a conversation about this, but have we ever looked at doing some type of after-school program for our students to get involved, kind of an after-school job, part-time? But it would be flexible. It would also, they're here. A lot of them stay after school for various things.
We can explore that.
I know there's other, Greencastle, Waynesboro, a couple other school districts actually utilize something like that, and they have a large majority of their students that participate.
Yeah, we would probably also, we would incur some cost because we would probably need at least an adult there to supervise that. I'd be interested to hear how they do that. I mean, as another option, unfortunately, this is a problem that requires multiple angles of attack to get to where we need to be.
So are you saying they're trained to help with like janitorial services?
Yeah, they do. I believe Greencastle, they work from I think it's 4 o'clock until about 8 o'clock. So it's like just a 4-hour shift that they work.
We have employed students as custodial staff already as one possible solution to this problem.
Good question. On their contract, health benefits, vision, dental, that's provided by them or us?
They take care of all that.
Okay.
$30 covers that. Okay.
I just have one, because I saw this company is from Annville, PA. So I guess my question is, just make me understand it, but if Mrs. Smith is supposed to be the janitor or the custodian at Nancy Grayson on like a PM shift and she calls off in the morning, does someone have to come to Annville to here?
I believe that's just where they're located. I mean, I don't know that they're all housed at Annville.
Headquarters probably in Annville.
Because I'm just thinking that's a pretty good.
That is a hike for sure.
Um, 6F just is kind of a big thing. I don't know if there are any comments or anyone have any questions about this. You'll remember that EI, our architectural firm, has provided us with estimates on growth. This is a little bit different. This is a sort of real-time, kind of ongoing, as I understand it, ongoing analytic report. I don't know what kind of data they draw from, but this is what they do. This is they are professionals in this area. And apparently other districts in Cumberland County, fast-growing districts, are using this tool and report that it is very helpful to them. I don't know.
So maybe a recommendation, like maybe the next committee of the whole, because didn't you say that you also have like a little short video or a clip of how this works and what it looks like to maybe just education?
We can absolutely do that and show it again at the next board meeting.
Is this something you've used before at previous tests? Okay, so this is.
In my last board update, there was a video link that kind of walked you through some high-level overview of what it does and how it looks. But there's a longer version of that I can share. And I believe, my conversations with the company, I think they would even maybe Skype in or would be willing to give and answer questions. I don't want to put them to that, but I can certainly reach out if that's a board desire. Because it is new and we're not exactly sure what it is.
The growth.
This is similar to what, this would help us plan for the future.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's used
with some of this construction.
Mechanicsburg. It's used in Cumberland Valley.
Okay.
Spoke to both superintendents and they highly recommend it.
So it gives us more information to make the hard decisions that are coming our way.
That's why I brought it forth, Dr. Lemon.
And maybe you don't know the answer to this, and I apologize for not having watched the video that you sent, but we pay this $10,500. It's for this 6 month, for an annual term. So, okay, so do we get periodic reports that or is it like one report a year, every 6 months, every month?
They are, to my understanding, that's to your point, that's what they do, is they are contacting and updating this information on a regular basis.
So it's almost like you have like some sort of data center or whatever, and I log in and I can see like the latest estimate or something like that?
There's always going to be some lag, but they are basically monitoring our district for growth at intervals and are communicating with, the townships and the boroughs. And tracking, first from our own, it's not just about enrollment growth. It's also shows, even though we have, our bus can show us that, it's a little bit more nimble in capturing parts of our district and where, populations are located as well. So I don't want to paint it as just the enrollment thing. It definitely does that, and that is why I would recommend that we get it. But it has other functions as well. As we look at where populations fall for elementaries and things like that, it can be extremely helpful.
So it can show like where the growth is, not just how much growth there is.
Right.
Any other questions, comments regarding discussion items? All right, that brings us to citizen comment period, our second citizen comment period. I didn't have anyone sign up. Is there anyone that would like to make a comment regarding any other items? Mr. Donovan.
Yeah, I'd like to request a curriculum report comparing Shippensburg to the best ranked public school in the state in regards to test scores, attendance, progress made, etc. I believe in competition. I believe in setting goals. I believe Shippensburg can be the best public education facility in this state. Having this comparison in front of us allows us to see where we are currently and what adjustments we need to make to compete with the best. Numbers don't tell the whole story, but they also do not lie. In regards to the janitorial service, just have a couple comments about that. Doing some research, the average pay for a custodian in Pennsylvania is $13 to $15 an hour. So I cannot see paying an outside organization to come in for $30 an hour. I second Becky's comment for getting students involved as a part-time job. I think that would be a beneficial thing for all involved. Possibly, I would also recommend setting up some kind of community service or disciplinary action where if a student or students cause damage or vandalism to school property, that they be held accountable and help clean up the damage done while under supervision from an adult. And also, I want to thank Becky and Charlie for their time and effort and dedication to our district and our students. I hope they stay involved in some capacity moving forward. I believe they both have valuable skills that can bring value to our district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Donovan. All right, that brings us to board comments. I think Ms. Eberly is going to need to leave here in a moment, so we're going to let her go first.
So Charlie, once again, thank you for your service. It was an honor to kind of ride this last hurrah with you. Definitely appreciate it. Enjoyed serving on the board with you. I'm sure this is not the last we'll be seeing of you. So my comment tonight, or discussion item, for future references. Tonight we've talked a lot about facilities. I'm budgeting only $3 million for elementary school renovations. Enrollment keeps climbing. I'd like to bring some kind of discussion back regarding realignment, but not the realignment that we initially were presented with, but possibly moving the third grade up to the intermediate school, manage one project, address some of those elementary needs, but maybe open up that discussion again to see what that would look like. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Scott?
Well, Charlie, congratulations, because I know your wife is doing cartwheels. Well, she told me already. She's so glad you're getting off the school board. And you're not retiring. I know I'll be out the garage working, especially on my cars. So thank you for all your service and everything you've done, and I wish you the best. Becky, it's only been a short time, but no one that I know put in more time with the school district and these kids than you did. You put in more time than anybody I've known of. And I thought I've been around kids a long time, but you do it with your heart and your feelings and everything. So I want to thank you for that time and what you've done.
Thank you, Fred.
Ms. Wolfinger?
Oh. How can I read this now? Thanks.
I was trying to cut it short.
Give me time, I know. You know I got a lot to say. So I don't know where to begin tonight, and I doubt that I'm going to be able to get through it without tears shed, because that's how I am. So please excuse me if that happens. Never in a million years would I have thought that leaving this darn seat tonight would be one of the hardest chapters to close for me, but it is. Becoming a member of this body of 9 has taught me more about myself in the last 16 months than just about anything else in my life. It has taught me that compromise is always possible, that dedicated service is necessary, and when you're passionate about something, you stand up and you fight for it. That is, after all, how I began my journey, sitting in the audience advocating for my own students and then for other students. Armed with facts, ideas, and strong convictions. Our students needed us then, and our students need us even more now. I want to thank the board members that allowed me the opportunity to be a part of something special that we have here in Shippensburg. We've had some great wins together in the last year, but there is so much work to still be done. Our town may be small, but our students' needs are immense. In the last year, we have started down a path that finally puts our students' needs first. Where it is not perfect, it was built on consensus and an understanding that not everybody gets what they want. It is the closest thing in many years that this district has had to a comprehensive solution to remedy the many ongoing challenges in all areas of the facilities, from building needs to athletics, with a student-first focus, not a self-serving focus. I challenge each of you, as the months continue to pass, to not lose focus of who it is that you serve. It is not yourself. It is not each other, and it is not the politics of Shippensburg. It is our students, our teachers, and our district staff. The cheapest solution is not always the right solution, and in the long run can end up being more costly, especially when those key groups are not considered in the decision making. I am still a firm believer that K-1, 2-3 realignment is not the answer for our district, and I continue to believe that the most long-term solution that will carry us through the next 20 years is to move third to SACE. I've built quite a file of data to support it as the best academic solution for our learners since originally sharing this idea last year with all of you. And I would love to continue to help in any way possible to bring that idea to reality. Remember, the profile of a graduate doesn't start in our high school, it begins in elementary. Outside of facilities, please don't lose sight of why we are all here, and that is to educate the next generation. Don't be a board member that just sits in this chair twice a month or at committee meetings. I challenge all of you guys to walk the hallways, to talk to the teachers, to read to the students, to go to the events, to show up and to make a difference, because it really is the way you see where the needs are in our district. Mr. August, I wish you absolutely nothing but the best. When we hired you, there was a consensus on the board that you were the right person to lead us in the direction that we needed to head. One of my biggest fears, if you remember, was whether you would become a Greyhound after being a bulldog for so long. I sit here today reassured that we made the right decision, and as I have seen the growth of a Greyhound happen. Where you are imperfect, as we all are, I hope that the board gives you the grace to make mistakes, accepts that you are still learning and growing into your role, but they support you to become the leader that will bring stability to Shippensburg if allowed. To our teachers and our district staff, I want to thank you for the job each one of you do. It is a thankless, exhausting, frustrating, and in many cases underpaid job, but I know in my heart that you are the secret sauce in Shippensburg. The dedication you each bring to educating, feeding, cleaning up after, counseling, and mentoring our next generation does not go unnoticed. We are all better as a district because of you. To our students and parents of the district, you are the reason I began this journey. You are the reason why I walked the halls of the buildings every single week. You are the reason I fought to stay. I've had so many students and parents reach out to me in the last 6 days, and I want to reassure you and everybody at this board that I will still be sitting here, just in a different seat. The school board is a place of student service, not self-service.
Thank you.
Very nice.
Mr. Kressler.
You thought it was tough for you to go after Fred. So the Powder Puff game is tomorrow night. I believe at 6 o'clock. Is that right, Coach? Coach is on that, 6 o'clock tomorrow night. I hear he's got an extensive offensive playbook. If you're free, stop out. I also know that winter sports start this Friday across Piattaboy. So a lot of our student athletes are getting into everything. And many of those kids and coaches participated in various Mid-Penn Media Days recently, which I think was at Cumberland Valley for most of them, Cumberland Valley High School. Really cool thing for those kids to get to be interviewed, feel like they're on Sports Center, that kind of stuff. And it's always good. Kids always seem to like that. For the two outgoing board members, Charlie, I've told you before, I've said it, I think you're crazy to do 16 years. I don't know how you did it. No idea. But kudos to you for that, because that's insane. And then Becky, quickly just want to take a moment to thank you for your time on the board. We certainly agreed on some things. We certainly disagreed on things. But that's what makes this a team of 10. And without a doubt, nobody can say that you're more committed to the students of the district. Nobody can say they're more committed to the students of the district than you. So best wishes. I look forward to seeing you every other Monday sitting out there until I know you'll be back on this board in 2 years. Thanks.
Mr. Bard.
Well, congratulations, Charlie, but I'm still not going to leave you alone. If I need some advice or opinion on something, I'll be calling you. And thank you, Becky, for your time you were here. Other than that, I don't know, I guess tonight was a very long, informative meeting. I still ain't got wrapped around my head this middle school project. That's a major. Being over that much is crazy in my opinion, but I just think we should have been forewarned. I don't remember being forewarned. I talked to several other board members that said they don't remember being forewarned. So I guess that's what the big shocker was on that. Other than that, I'm good.
Thank you. Mr. Noggle?
Yes. Becky, I'd like to say thank you for what you've done. I know you and I haven't gotten along, but you have given your heart and soul to this. Touched a lot of kids, done a lot of good things. And, I just hate seeing things go political.
Yeah.
And, there's place for your efforts to come, future, I'm sure.
I'll still be here.
I know you will. So, I wish you well.
Thank you, Kurt.
And anyhow, that's it. Charlie, I really don't know. I actually know why your hair's gray. It don't take long. So it's tough. A lot of things. It's like you get just so much information all at once. It's not easy. So, but you gave me a new respect for what you've done. So, and I've known you since we were kids, or teenagers, I should say. So, congrats. Thanks for all that you've done for the students in this school.
Thank you.
Mr. Suitors?
Everybody already says everything. One thing I'm disappointed at is the parent loop. I really thought we were going to get that in my term, but it didn't happen. And it needs to be done. It's a real safety issue. It's just not a convenience, it's safety.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to thank everybody for their support, and I'm not going to miss it. Coming to the meetings, staying here till 10 o'clock. Do need a break, but I'll be all right. Always be a Greyhound.
Thank you. Dr. Lyman?
Maybe we should name the parent loop after you.
I like that.
So I'll start with Becky. Becky, I'm proof that you can't really ever leave the board, even if you lose an election. So I'm sure we'll see you around. That much energy has to go somewhere. So I would welcome it back here or wherever you choose to serve. Charlie, I tell people all the time that I don't know anyone that knows Shippensburg as well as you do, and that knowledge and that sort of historical just information about just absolutely everything. Everybody knows you. Everybody has some kind of connection to you, and that was invaluable on the board. And you really, I always felt like you had Shippensburg as you were doing all of this for Shippensburg, especially for the kids. And I think there are even some things that you did anonymously that we don't even know about that you didn't need the glory. You just did it because you're who you are. So thank you for being that voice for the community. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Well, I have to say something as well. It's funny. I mean, I've done this a few times now, but post-election, whatever, and I don't remember us having like the same kinds of feels, I guess, that we've had in the, and I like that, right? Because we sit around these series of tables and we discuss and we argue and we get frustrated, because we care about stuff, and it's hard when other people see things differently than us. But I think it's a good thing that we're sort of having this moment to recognize the service that our fellow board members have given. Becky, we met during COVID crisis, and you didn't like me very much, and you made that public. But you know what? Like, it's as you've said several times. Like,
I don't know, like that was a weird issue that like, once in a lifetime, hopefully sort of issue that divides a community and divides a world really. But beyond that, we recognized that we could work together, and once we got to know each other, we could respect each other and trust each other, and I appreciate that. And you've taught me, along with so many others on the board, that you can't hold with what a preconceived notion of like how you're going to get along with a particular person, because if you get to know them and you have conversations, you learn to respect them, and you can work together. So I appreciate that. Charlie, you've been next to me a lot on this board. When I started 6 years ago in the middle school, you were right next to me, and I only knew you by reputation. I hadn't ever met you. And it was a pleasure getting to know you and getting to sort of recognize who you were and what you were about, and a pleasure to begin to understand how much you care about the community. And often you see those who aren't, I don't know, they're not the ones that we regularly look at, right? They're not the ones that we regularly see. You see everybody. You see the ones that are less seen, and you really taught me that, and helped me look to see those people who aren't being seen. And I think about it all the time when issues come up. I think about like what would Charlie think about this? What would Charlie's concern be? So I really appreciate our time together, and I, relationships ebb and flow, and I've valued your input, and I've valued the conversations that we've had, and I appreciate having worked with you. So with that, we are to information date savers. Our next regularly scheduled meeting is December 4th for the Committee of the Whole, and that is also our reorganization meeting. And then we will have a regular school board meeting. And then we have various committee meetings, and we do not have another regular meeting until January 8th. However, we do need to have a Committee of the Whole meeting, which will be a public meeting to discuss facilities issues, and we do not know when that will be scheduled, but it will have to be advertised to the public as per our directive. But I will leave it to administration to schedule that and for us to find the right time for that meeting.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
This is separate from what we talked about tonight, or this is what we talked about tonight?
Yeah, what I just mentioned was what we talked about. Will be a continuation of the conversation that we began today.
Just in a different meeting.
So we're not going to we're not going to have, we're not going to have the meeting, we're not going to discuss this till December 4th, about the project.
No, I didn't say that. I said
That's what I'm trying to get straight.
we're going to have some other meeting that isn't presently on the calendar.
Okay, I got you now, thank
you. So I don't know when that meeting's going to be, but it will be scheduled.
Okay.
November 22nd, 2-hour early dismissal for the Thanksgiving break for students, teachers, and staff. And then November 23rd through 27th is the Thanksgiving holiday, and the district is closed. November 28th is an in-service day, no school for students and teachers, and then that brings us to December. All right, that brings us to the end of our agenda, so we are now adjourned.
Amen.